1. After the wealthy princess fainted, she discovered that she could hear everyone's inner thoughts. She looked at the white moonlight, who was crying, to the point of trembling. Beside her ear rang his complaining. She's always crying, so freaking annoying. Why hasn't Lin Wanwan arrived yet? To comfort me if it were before seeing me. Like this, she definitely would have felt so heartbroken. Away in a foreign country for 5 years. Could it be that she's really changed her mind and fallen for Mu Shen? I must make her quickly divorce Mu Shen. The Lin family's son-in-law can only be me. I want to become the most powerful person in this city. Lin Wanwan's pupils shrank slightly, not daring to believe these were actually the inner thoughts of Chujimo. Knowing each other for over a dozen years, he always portrayed himself as someone indifferent to fame and fortune. Yet inside he was overflowing with schemes and calculations. He even thought this mind-reading ability was way too absurd. Surely it was just hallucinations caused by her head being bumped. But right after, another voice rang out. Even though Wanwan and Mu Shen registered their marriage in her heart, she only has me. All my hard work over the past few years wasn't wasted at all. Right now, I must definitely not mess up my own lines as long as I return. No matter what requests I make. Wanwan will obediently listen and follow. Wealth, status, identity. Everything she has will belong to me. Lin Wanwan tightly closed her eyes. Chujimo's greedy inner thoughts entered her ears with absolute clarity, making it impossible for her to keep deceiving herself anymore. The blood in her body felt freezing cold. The person she loved deeply for so many years was actually plotting against her like this. Lin Wanwan angrily opened her eyes wide, her gaze icy cold as she stared fixedly at Chujimo. Chujimo was frightened by this unfamiliar stare, stepping back as a hint of panic suddenly rose in the depths of his heart. He grabbed her hand and spoke in a gentle voice. What's wrong? Lin Wanwan didn't even bother to acknowledge him. The sense unease in Chujimo's heart grew even more intense. Just as he was about to keep questioning her, the doctor nearby spoke up to remind them the patient now needs to rest quietly. Family members, please pay attention. The moment the doctor finished speaking, Uncle Tu threw off Chujimo's hand with a look of utter disgust, shoving him hard to one side. Chujimo forced down his discomfort, speaking gently. Aunt Tu, I want to stay here to take care of Wanwan. At this moment, I maintained a casual expression, walked up to look at him, and then coldly spoke up. May I ask under what identity you are staying here to take care of me? I am the legitimate husband of Lin Wan. Taking care of my wife is my duty, while you, an outsider. What the hell do you count as? Although I had already decided to divorce him and wanted to thoroughly stay away from this drama before officially doing the paperwork to leave, I had to vent the anger from my past life. Chujimo aggrievedly bit his lip, turning to look at Lin Wanwan with a pitiful expression. In his established impression, as long as Chujimo put on an aggrieved look like that, Lin Wanwan would definitely not let anyone who bullied him get off easily. But this time, Lin Wanwan showed zero expression and didn't even bother to grant him a single glance. Chujimo nervously clutched her hospital gown, tears welling up. Lin Wanwan finally uttered her first words since waking up. I need some quiet time to rest, everyone. Get out. She completely ignored Chujimo's vulnerability and even bluntly issued an order to kick him out. Chujimo's face instantly turned pale white, unable to figure out why Lin Wanwan had suddenly become so cold. Clearly before boarding the plane, he could still hear her anticipation, but right now was obviously not the time to interrogate to the end. Chujimo wiped away his tears, forcing out a bitter smile with 3 parts of sorrow in his gaze. Well then, you get some rest and take good care of your health. I'll come visit you again tomorrow. Deep down, his heart was viciously plotting. It must be that during the time I was abroad, that scheming Mu Shen took the opportunity to climb up. I already guessed he wasn't any good person, always acting like a total. Going abroad, that scheming Mu Shen has seized the opportunity to climb up. I guessed right away he wasn't any good kind. Already misunderstood. I've never said that. Tail hanging onto Wanwan. It truly makes people disgusted. The absolute limit. Wanwan's husband can only be me. Only if I'm successfully marrying into the Lin family as a live-in son-in-law can I completely shake off this impoverished background. Lin Wanwan real. He couldn't listen to these chatterboxes anymore. She clenched her teeth tightly, suppressing her anger, and roared, "Get out of here, all of you!" Chujimo aggrievedly sniffed his nose and had no choice but to quietly get up and walk out of the hospital room. His retreating figure looked extremely lonely and desolate. Aunt Tu carefully tucked the blanket back in for Lin Wanwan and spoke softly. Wanwan, you just rest assured and sleep. Auntie and your dad will keep watch outside the door. If you need anything, just call. Use anytime, okay? Lin Wanwan tiredly nodded and closed both eyes. As for me, I couldn't wish for anything better, just wanting to slip away fast. Yet just as I was about to turn around to leave Lin Wanwan on the hospital bed, suddenly opened her eyes. You stay here? My eyes widened into a mocking smile as I helplessly stepped back from the hospital ward entrance. Inside the room, there were probably only me and Lin Wanwan left. Beside my ear, this noisy scheming inner thoughts were gone. The nervous, out like a string mind of Lin Wanwan finally relaxed. But this relaxation didn't last long before a bone-drilling, marrow-piercing pain all over her body struck. I calmly looked at her and spoke up, feeling very much in pain. Lin Wanwan bit her lip without saying a word. I raised an eyebrow, pulled a chair over, and sat down beside the bed. If your body has any abnormalities, you'd better not hide it from the doctor. Lin Wan's sharp gaze pierced like she was scrutinizing me. Her lips curled into a faint, speechless smile, but deep down inside she silently lamented. Anyway, we were husband and wife for 3 years. How could I not see through these little thoughts of yours? Lin Wanwan furrowed her brows slightly, full of confusion. Claiming to be husband and wife for 3 years, how could it mean she and him? But clearly yesterday, the two of them just held their wedding. Do you want to drink some water? Lin Wanwan nodded very slightly. I stood up and walked over to the water dispenser, gazing intently at the flowing water, then gradually sank into deep thought. In the end, I actually managed to act so nonchalantly when facing Lin Wanwan. Does this mean that I have let go of her? Can I cast away the entanglements of the past life's old matters and try to embrace a brand new life actually? Thinking about it calmly now, in this world, is there really anyone where if they leave someone else, they won't be able to survive? There is no love that exists forever without fading away. It's also time for me to look forward. Absolutely not letting myself keep any lingering attachments toward Lin Wanwan. To start this hard-earned new life, I reached out to turn off the water, grabbed the cup of water and cotton swabs, and returned to the hospital bed. Your current condition is quite special. You can't drink too much water. I used a cotton swab dipped in water to help moisten your lips. Okay? She looked at me with a calm gaze, although she felt my inner thoughts were very bizarre. She could truly sense that I used to love her very deeply. This completely went against her previous understanding. She had always firmly believed that I married her because of her family background. Since her family status had declined, I wanted to borrow the Lin family's influence, climb higher with not a shred of genuine romantic feeling. She never expected that my parents, who loved to cling to powerful people, naturally carried a sense of ostracization in her eyes. She believed that such a family could never raise anyone decent. Yet this reality right in front of her slapped her hard across the face. The man she had always trusted and loved wholeheartedly versus the guy she constantly wary and guarded against assuming. He had deep hidden motives all along the ladder, actually, sincerely, and wholeheartedly poured out his entire being to love her. How utterly ironic. I placed the cup of water on the bedside table and sat down. Sitting for a moment, I really didn't want to face her anymore. I'll go find a nurse to take care of you. All right. Lin Wanwan's facial expression instantly darkened. No, I'm not used to having strangers wait on me. I was startled, slightly widening my eyes, starting. Face immediately darkened. I am not used to letting strangers wait on me. Startled, she slightly widened her eyes, deeply doubting whether her head had been bashed in or not. After being silent for a long while, I still had no choice but to sit back in my original spot. I've already discussed it with Aunt 2. I will take responsibility for taking care of you until you're discharged from the hospital. Once you're discharged, we will go do the divorce paperwork. Calmly uttering those 2 words, divorce, my tense shoulders, also immediately relaxed as a sense of unprecedented relief surged within my heart, just like all the dark clouds from my past life had vanished into thin air. Lin Wanwan still maintained that expressionless look. Those 2 words, divorce, did not stir up any emotional waves in her structure whatsoever. I lowered my head, quietly staring down at the hospital floor, while a mocking smile quickly flashed across the depths of my eyes. At first, I really was stupid. The point of being pathetic in my past life, I actually naive. I thought that by using pure sincerity and unreserved companionship, I could melt her. Her nature was inherently that of a cold and ruthless person. The love she could dispense was already extremely scarce to begin with, and she had long since chosen to give it all away to Chuzimo, leaving no spare affection to share with anyone else. Reliving the past events, Lin Wanwan gradually realized, strange thing, I seemed to have experienced a future that others had never experienced before. This matter completely fell outside the scope of her inherent understanding. If it were before, she definitely would have sneered with contempt, but experiencing it personally, she instead felt it wasn't entirely impossible. She stared at me, without blinking. Yesterday we just finished holding our wedding. Now you're already eager to divorce. What will outsiders say about this? Have you thought about the consequences? I lowered my head without responding to her gaze, missing the complex emotion that flashed across her face. We can choose to keep it hidden and not make it public. Is there any paper wall that doesn't let the wind leak through? What on earth did these words of hers mean? I took the initiative to propose a divorce, cutting off ties with her. Shouldn't she be overjoyed and immediately agree to it? After all, what she hated most was being forced by others. Being forced to marry me made her extremely disgusted, which naturally led to even greater repulsion toward me. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to chase away those terrible memories in my mind. My head, I asked back with utter bewilderment. Don't you want to divorce me immediately? And one somewhat unnaturally avoided the gaze. It's not that I don't want a divorce. It's just that right now, we're right in the spotlight. So getting a divorce isn't convenient and will bring trouble to my work and life. I suddenly understood and nodded. All right, I understand your concerns. Lin furrowed her brows in confusion. What on earth did he understand? She was extremely desperate to probe into my thoughts, yet at this moment, my heart was as calm as still water, without a single ripple. Naturally, she would not be able to dig out the answer she wanted. Take advantage of the time. Sleep a little longer. Once you wake up, I'll go prepare some food for you. I stood up. Lin Wan hurriedly called out. Where are you planning to go? Am I staying here to be an eyesore until you rest? I looked at her in surprise. Lin Wan awfully cleared her throat and turned her head away. It won't be an eyesore. Me. If I didn't misread it, she actually seemed to be genuinely shy, which really made one feel somewhat strange. Lin Wan's expression changed as she turned back to look at me, making me instinctively startle. Extremely confused, I tilted my head and asked, what's wrong? She bit her lip tightly without saying a word. I calmly sat down and continued scrolling through my phone. Because Lin Wan was injured, her vital energy suffered heavy damage, and after just a short while she had already fallen asleep. Looking at her expression, which carried an on and off hostility, truly made one feel annoyed inside. I stood up and left that place to head into the restroom. After walking out of the restroom, I bumped into Juzimo, standing right against the wall. In my heart, I wasn't surprised at all. Juzimo was the first to open his mouth and speak. Did you go and rat me out first? Opening her mouth to speak first, did you go snitch beforehand? Face right. Whenever Juzimo faced me, he never unstared, looked me straight in the eye, seeming to always consider himself a tier above others. His gaze always carried a sense of contempt. This was the confidence that Lin Wan had bestowed upon him. I stroked my hair and smiled in response. Why don't you try guessing for yourself? Juzimo seemed to lose emotional control. Hanyo need to see the situation clearly. Don't want to sound too harsh, but Wan and I are childhood sweethearts. If back then Grandpa Lin hadn't stopped it and refused to cancel this engagement, two of us would have been married long ago. I looked straight into his blazing, angry eyes and chuckled as I replied, so what if you're childhood sweethearts? The person who married her in the end is still me. No matter how much you envy, it's all useless. You can only watch us being affectionate with your own eyes. To a certain extent, out of everyone, Juzimo, I understand him the most, knowing exactly where to poke to hit his sore spot. Sure enough, he immediately began panting heavily. Mushin, how dare you say something like that? You think Wan will follow you? You really have no self-awareness at all. Deep down, Wan extreme detests you. Are you really that stupid or just playing dumb? Of course, deep down, I knew very well, having seen everything crystal clear for a long time. The very first time Lin Wan and I met, we were still young back then. I thought that little girl had grown up, looking way too pretty, making me just want to step forward, get acquainted and close. But her aura was icy and distant, radiating a keep strangers at a distance vibe that made me never dare to approach her. Ever since that day, we never met again, until the summer after high school graduation, when Grandpa Lin invited me to the Lin household. Learning she was my fiancée, my first budding love blossomed. And I just like that fell in love with her, while also understanding clearly that she didn't like me at all, and even felt extremely repulsed by me. Seeing me keep quiet, Juzimo deep down felt much more at ease. Flashing a triumphant smile, Wan treats the people she hates terribly. What I'm saying is also for your own good. I advise you to hurry up and divorce her, lest you suffer and have to take the hit later on. Though he wanted the two of us to divorce, this remark was actually true. I held back the urge to snap back. Spare me your haughty attitude. You went abroad for 5 years, and people always change. Just now, in the hospital room, you probably also felt coldness, didn't you? You're already starting to panic inside, aren't you? The moment I uttered those words, Chujimo's face turned pale. In a flash. How could his heart not panic over that? Lin Wanwan had never treated him with such coldness. He caught his expression and chuckled coldly. There is no wall that cannot be broken down. Over the past 5 years, I've spent quite a bit of effort. Where on earth do you get the confidence? Feel that she will always need you. Will she forever detest me? Jujimo opened his mouth to retort but still couldn't squeeze out a single syllable. Seeing him choking up like that, my objective was basically achieved. Took a step, preparing to walk away. Wanwan has loved me for all these years. She will definitely love me for life. I stopped, turned my head sideways, and said, then I'll have to watch very carefully to see how long this confidence of yours lasts. I will definitely make Wanwan leave. Chujimo clenched both hands into fists, his face looking extremely ugly. I let out a cold laugh and turned to walk away, not even bothering to look back. Arriving outside the hospital room door of Lin Wanwan, I did not hurry to step inside, recalling the sharp attacks from Zemo in the past. He had teamed up with Lin Wanwan to suppress me, pushing me into the abyss of profound despair, forcing me to bear extreme torment and taste every bit of bitterness and humiliation. Now that I've been reborn for another lifetime, of course I can't just let it go easily. But how on earth should I retaliate? Saru of Lin Wanwan. I didn't hurriedly step inside. Recalling the targeting from Zemo previously, he colluded with Lin Wanwan to suppress me, pushing me to sink into a deep despairing abyss, forcing me to bear the ultimate pain, forcing me to taste every bit of bitterness and humiliation. Presently, I've been given a second chance at life naturally. I can't let it go. Avant Lee's bed number 302. Today, going head to head directly with them really isn't a wise choice. I don't want to ruin my own entire life again because of these two people. Heaven granting me a chance to start over from scratch wasn't so. I could follow the same old disastrous path and make them lose everything they currently have. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, making him experience the feeling of hitting rock bottom, leaving aside whether I even have that capability. Even if did right, I'm afraid my entire life would only ever be lived just to revolve around revenge. Aside from this counterattack method, actually, there is still another choice, which is to sabotage the relationship between the two of them. Yet just thinking about the whole process makes me feel truly extremely suffocating. Pretending to act out a script every single day in front of someone I loathe is really no different from a nightmare. Weighing and considering it deeply in my heart. Why not just bury all this resentment at the bottom of my heart? Cherish the chance of this rebirth and start a brand new life, peacefully, living out an entire lifetime. Wouldn't that be better? I persuaded myself once more, deep down inside, maintaining an indifferent expression as I pushed open the hospital room door and stepped inside. Lin Wanwan at this moment was still immersed in her sleep. I walked into the restroom, brushed my teeth and washed my face, perfunctorily walked out and let myself drop down to lie on the bed provided for family members, ready to take a really good, sound sleep. I had been busy all day long and hadn't rested properly, so this sleep was extremely deep and heavy. When I snapped awake, the sky outside was already pitch black. Putting my phone to check the time, I gaped in utter shock. It was already 5 o'clock in the morning. Have you rested properly? The gentle voice of a woman rang by my ear. I raised my head up to look at her, feeling she also looked wrecked. Lin Wanwan didn't say anything more, and the hospital room sank into silence once again. Are you hungry? My stomach is a little hungry. Both of us spoke up almost in unison. After finishing, we fell back into silence. A trace of annoyance flashed across my face. Flipped the blanket aside to get out of bed. I'll go get you some food. Right now, you can only eat some porridge, so when I bring it back, don't you dare be picky and choosy. Making it clear in advance, so that later, when I bring the porridge back, Lin Wanwan doesn't start pulling the long face at me again. There's really no need to invite trouble upon yourself. Lin Wanwan nodded faintly. Deep down, I understood clearly. I put on my shoes and headed toward the door, just pushing the door open to step outside, when I saw Yaki standing right by the window. On my face, smile instinctively bloomed. Principal Exu, are you here? To Shujaki, visibly startled. Then she nervously lowered her head to greet sir. I suddenly remembered that Shujaki at this point didn't know me at all yet. The smile on my lips gradually faded away, a trace of regret flashing deep in my heart. Kujaki was Lin Wanwan's assistant in my past life, and only gradually grew close to her after I married Lin Wanwan. Chujaki was a really great person, extremely empathetic toward me and usually took care of me a lot. Deep down, I was always very grateful and wanted to find an opportunity to repay her. But now I've started over from scratch, I'm afraid there's no longer any chance to be friends with her anymore. Sealing this gratitude deep at the bottom of my heart, I flicked my hand lightly toward the hospital room. Wanwan is hungry. Chujaki nodded slightly. I'll go get the porridge right now. After Chujaki turned around and walked away, I casually unlocked my phone to see a message from Lu Tubai Wanwan. How is it now, Brother Shen? Are you okay? Lu Tubai was my close buddy of many years. Now having the chance to live again, I always tried to hold back from contacting. I'm afraid that after talking with him, my emotions would completely collapse. Someone on the verge of collapsing once faced with a trusted friend will strip away all their defensive shells and instantly become extremely fragile and weak. Just like right at this very moment. My nose stung with soreness, unable to hold it back. I took a deep breath and my fingers tapped rapidly. Feel that once you've finished speaking on the keyboard. Lin Wanwan, it doesn't matter, I'm doing very well right now, you don't need to worry about me. Tomorrow I'm going to school, we'll talk later. You actually agreed to go to school. Did you finally think it through? Across the screen I could perceive her agitation. I faintly smiled and didn't continue texting back. I used to be a medical student. If it weren't for wanting to marry Wanwan and having to grit my teeth and drop out of school, according to Uncle Tu's demand, I would have already become a doctor, living a life that, although not too dazzling, would definitely be extremely meaningful and complete. I shoved the phone back into my pants pocket, leaning my back against the cold wall, spacing out. Chujaki turned back and saw me in a daze. She originally didn't want to speak up and disturb me, but afraid Lin Wanwan would get cranky from waiting too long while hungry, he had no choice but to step over. Sir, I've brought the porridge over. I started startled and took the thermal food container from her hands. Carrying a faint smile, I asked, is this brought from home? Here it's porridge personally cooked by Madam, and it's been kept at the nurse's station with instructions given to bring it over as soon as the young miss wakes up. Chujaki spoke somewhat timidly. This really treated me like Wanwan's husband. Calling my past life, when living in the Lin household, the person who truly respected me could treat me like a normal person was only Chujaki. I held the thermal food container in my hands, not rushing walk into the hospital room, instead staring fixedly at Chujaki and asking with concern, what time did you arrive here? A little past 7 o'clock. Last night, as soon as I finished handling my work, I came straight over. Well, I'm here to take care of her, so you should hurry back and get a proper night's sleep. Facing my solitary concern, Chujaki furrowed her brows clearly, finding it a bit unfamiliar, but she still answered with utmost reverence. Thank you for your kind intentions, sir. The old madam told me to keep watch here, so I still cannot go rest yet. I noticed the expression on her face, realizing that doing this would place pressure on her, and helplessly nodded. All right then, I'll head inside first. Finished speaking, I turned around and stepped into the hospital room. The soundproofing the hospital room door was probably very poor. Lin Wanwan inside the room could easily hear the conversation outside the door just now. I pushed the door open and stepped in. Lin Wanwan looked at me, her expression slightly shifting. At that time, I didn't realize it at all. I walked over, placed the food container on the bedside table, opened the lid, poured the porridge into a bowl, and then calmly sat down on the chair, preparing to feed the porridge to Lin Wanwan. The spoon was just brought to Lin Wanwan's lips, and she clenched her mouth shut and refused to open it. My gaze was filled with doubt. You don't want to eat, did you? Forget about Chujaki earlier. A flash crossed Lin Wanwan's eyes. I lightly pressed my lips together, calmly replied, we don't know each other at all. Lin Wanwan's sharp eyes narrowed slightly, putting on a tyrannical sharp air of hers. I was more than familiar with this look of hers. I flung the spoon right back into the bowl, speaking in an indifferent tone. Is there something else not to your liking? I'm really done waiting on you, hand and foot. Lin Wanwan slightly opened her mouth, then closed it again. She knew that if she spoke the truth, would definitely throw the bowl down and storm off right away. Moreover, walking away, straight without looking back, before figuring out the ins and outs of the matter. She didn't want to let me escape her control. Are you going to eat or not? Seeing Lin Wanwan remained silent all along, I gradually grew impatient. Lin Wanwan had never heard anyone dare talk to her like this. Her facial expression instantly became extremely ugly, yet she still took a deep breath and opened her mouth to eat. She really was starved to the bone. Single bowl sliding down into her stomach, was barely scratching an itch. Seeing her look as if she still wanted to keep eating, I decisively put down the bowl in my hand and said in a grim tone, You still cannot eat too much right now. Wanwan is not a child after all. Since I had already spoken so bluntly, even if she wasn't full yet, for now she had no choice but to endure it. I packed up the thermal food container. Properly picked up my things, walked out of the hospital room, and casually, no matter what, for the outside means completely cutting off any chance for him to compete for inheritance rights. I practiced for a long time. Hurry and taste it all right. Well, it tastes too awful, Shujaki. When turning back, seeing the clock was almost 6 o'clock. I slowly walked over to the edge of the hospital bed, helping Lin Wanwan tuck in the corner of the blanket, and then spoke to her with a serious expression. I have to go to school now. Lin Wanwan slightly arched her eyebrows. Therefore, during the day, just let the nurse come, take care of you. After class finishes, I'll come over first. I lightly nodded, since I promised Uncle Tu that I would take care of her until she was discharged from the hospital. I would definitely keep my word and follow through, absolutely not washing my hands of it midway and ignoring her. Go on then. Lin Wanwan immediately closed both eyes tightly for heading to school. I had to change clothes first. Before getting married, I was overflowing with joy and moved all my longings into the bridal home. Therefore, no matter how reluctant I was right now and how much I didn't want to return that painful trap, I still had to bite the bullet and make a trip back there, taking a taxi straight to the front door. As soon as I entered, I saw Su Tuilan inside, extremely surprised. I furrowed my brows. Mom, you stayed here the whole time without leaving. How did you know I left the hospital and would come here? I want to have a proper conversation with you. Seeing that the time right now was still quite abundant, and I wasn't in a rush to run straight to school yet, I walked over without the slightest hesitation and sat down. Su Tuilan, for an irritated expression, and started questioning. Is it true that you said you want to divorce Wanwan? Are you actually out of your mind, Su Tuilan? Slammed the teacup down hard, her face covered in a layer of fury. Do you even have any idea how big of a blessing it is to be able to marry that girl, huh? I bitterly smiled, replied in a low voice. If I had never mistakenly loved Lin Wanwan, perhaps that would be the true blessing. Hearing that, Su Tuilan was instantly stunned. Now you finally understand what Mom was saying. Mom always advised you not to love Lin Wanwan in Mom's eyes as long as you didn't invest true feelings into her, and just welcomed her across the threshold. Like that you would be able to live a peaceful, happy life forever. I reached out to grab Su Tuilan's hand. Mom's ultimate goal was just to want the best for me, wanting me to not have to worry for a single lifetime. Mom, did I say it right? Su Tuilan's expression stiffened slightly. This child, you're overthinking things. As soon as she finished speaking, her face was filled with unnaturalness as she forcefully yanked her hand out of mine. Inside my heart, I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Depths of my eyes instead flashed with a trace of a smile. I maintained an extremely serious expression as I spoke. Even if she doesn't give me money in the future, and even colludes with Juzimo to humiliate me, and even goes to all lengths to force me into a divorce, making me ruin my reputation, I'll just swallow my pride and endure it all. How dare they act like that? Su Tuilan widened her eyes in shock, her entire person, in the blink of an eye, exploding into a rage. Our Mu family, though not what we used to be, is still a family, with deep foundations at least. Besides, the two families are also connected by marriage. What the hell does she rely on to dare treat you like this, huh? I coldly sneered. I laughed, but deep down, she only loves Jujimo, a woman once. It's for the man she loves. Will sometimes go all out and defy everything. What love, and promises all of it, is just an illusion. A woman's love is the most useless thing in the world. Su Tuilan let out a long, heavy sigh, her gaze revealing hesitation as she asked, will the things you talked about really happen? I firmly nodded. Lin Wanwan has always been repulsed by me, and now being forced to marry me against her wishes, she must oath me to the absolute limit. If it's as you said. Su Tuilan lowered her head in thought for a moment, then spoke up again. If you are truly determined to divorce her as your mother, I naturally won't stop you, but deep down you must think through thoroughly marrying a woman with such good conditions. I'm afraid in the future there really won't be another chance like this. Marrying someone with good conditions doesn't necessarily mean you'll be happier. Besides, even if you're single in this life, you can still take care of yourself and live happily and well. Stop you, but in your heart you must think things through thoroughly. Marrying a woman with such good conditions, I'm afraid, in the future, there basically won't be any chance left. For you, marrying someone with good conditions also doesn't necessarily mean you'll be happier. Even if in this life you stay single, you can still take care of. No wonder in the original text they actually teamed up to take down. I smiled brightly and said to her, "You're starting to talk nonsense again. If I didn't marry Mom and Dad, oh, forget it. Let's not mention these things anymore." Su Tuilan was an extremely competitive person. This I only truly understood after being reborn. But the hardships she tasted when she was young made her whole being bristle with thorns and spikes, refusing no matter what to soften her stance or show gentleness. She was terrified that if she showed even a sliver of weakness, pain would knock on her door once again and deal her a fatal blow, leaving her in agony worse than death. Back then, when Mulihang married her and brought her home, I was just turning 1 year old. No matter how many nannies were hired at home, they could never replace the role of a mother. A child clinging to their mother is a natural instinct. Able to find her, they would cry endlessly. But I heard from the long-serving domestic helpers that when I was little, I almost rarely fussed or cried. At that time, I acutely sensed something and persistently questioned over and over, finally discovering that before I started remembering things, Su Tuilan spent almost every day at home keeping me company, and most of the time, she tended to me with her own hands. Anyone could see the deep affection she had for me. But later, for some unknown reason, starting from a certain day, she deliberately distanced herself from me. What on earth had happened in between that made her ruthlessly make this decision? To this very day, no one has been able to clearly explain the underlying reason. Later on, when I grew up, she gave birth to a daughter with Mulihang, who was also a younger sister, Mu Xiaobi. She wasn't close to this flesh and blood, either. At first, I thought she was born with emotional coldness, and later on, I felt she only cared about fame and fortune. But now thinking carefully about it, if she truly only cared about fame and fortune. Back then, when the Mu family's investments failed miserably and headed toward bankruptcy, she still stayed behind, not even uttering a single word of complaint. Although I didn't understand why she was like that, I knew deep down that she had this home. She had me and Xiaobei, and that was enough. Xiaobei saw things even more clearly than Mom. I couldn't help letting out a soft chuckle. The laughter sounded so pure and bright. She said that me marrying Lin Wanwan would not be happy. Su Tuilan revealed an astonished look. When did she say that to you? Just 2 days before the wedding. What does a little brat understand anyway? Su Tuilan gave a light, disdainful snort. So young, and yet she loves sticking her nose into adult matters, truly lacking discipline at home. I just stood to one side, with a faint, indifferent smile, looking at the clock. The time really wasn't early anymore. So I resolutely stood up from the sofa, reaching out to massage and knead her stiff shoulders. Whenever you have free time, I'll take you to a good hospital to properly treat your shoulder arthritis. I'm going upstairs to wash up. In a little while, I have to go to school. You're planning to go to school and study? Su Tuilan's expression shifted slightly. Could it be you're not planning to drop out anymore? I smiled and shook my head at her. If it wasn't for planning to divorce, I naturally would have resigned myself to dropping out. Su Tuilan's facial expression instantly changed, vaguely guessing the reason behind it. What on earth is the meaning of what you just said? Was the matter of dropping out forced upon you by Uncle Tu, recalling the coercion from Uncle Tu? Back then my expression accordingly turned ugly as well. Hearing these words, Su Tuilan instantly flew into a rage, her 2 cheeks instantly turning red with anger, as she pointed her finger straight at my nose and scolded. You useless, muddle-headed child. Such a major matter. Why didn't you tell Mom, huh? Mom even thought it was because you didn't want to study anymore. If you had told Mom about this earlier, Mom definitely would have gone to the Lin household to demand an explanation. That old man too, what on earth does he rely on to dare act so arrogant like that? As soon as she finished speaking, her anger still unappeased, she grabbed her coffee cup and hurled it hard at the television. The LCD screen simply couldn't stand the blow, shattering into spiderweb-like cracks in the blink of an eye, and the coffee cup also fell and shattered into 100 pieces. Aunt Tran, who happened to be walking out from the kitchen, was so startled by this scene that she froze in her tracks. Su Tuilan glanced sideways at her, repeatedly letting out a few cold chuckles. The people of the Lin family simply, Mom knows Mom definitely, went to the Lin family's house to demand an explanation. She hugged Tu Chen. What on earth does she rely on to dare act so arrogant like that? The words just spoken, her anger still hadn't subsided. She grabbed a coffee cup and hurled it hard at the TV. The liquid crystal screen simply couldn't withstand the blow, shattering into a spiderweb pattern in the blink of an eye, and the coffee cup also fell and broke into 100 pieces. Ichin, just happening to walk out from the kitchen, was scared and frozen in place. Su Tuilan used the corner of her eyes to glance at her, once continuously letting out the ow group. I feel you should still temporarily step back. There's nothing good about it. You should divorce her early on. it's also for the best continuing to live. This spineless, easily bullied personality of yours, sooner or later, you're bound to suffer a huge loss. Aunt Tran was a long-serving nanny of the Lin household, personally dispatched here by Uncle Tu. On the surface, she spoke words that sounded extremely pleasant, claiming that she worked carefully and knew how to take care of others and could well manage our daily routines, but in reality, she was planted here to monitor things. The angry remarks that Su Tuilan had just uttered right now, Aunt Tran, upon turning back, would definitely not miss a single word in recording and reporting everything back to Uncle Tu. Deep down, Su Tuilan knew this as clear as day. She had clearly intended to speak out loud like that just then. This matter was entirely my fault. My hands were tightly clasped together, placed in front of me as I lowered my head, putting on a remorseful look, identical to the way I used to look when I made mistakes as a child. Back then, I didn't dare mention this to Mom simply because I was afraid Mom would rush over to the Lin household and cause a huge scene. By then, it would only make the Lin family even more satisfied. In my past life, I always failed to understand a simple truth. Whether or not you have a biological family backing you up and standing behind you, life with your in-laws' family will be completely different. Su Tuilan had a sharp, shrewish personality and was very hard to mess with, having grown up in a complicated remote neighborhood since childhood. Dealing with someone who lived in silk and satin and had to follow rules strictly since youth like Uncle Tu was truly as easy as turning over her hand. If in my past life she had stood behind me as my backing, the Lin household, I definitely wouldn't have been in such a wretched state. Mom, I remember back then your temper was also very fiery, and you were never one to be pushed around, so why did you become so cowardly and spineless? This time, seeing this wronged, pitiful look of mine, Su Tuilan's tone also gradually softened. Told you early on to give up and not invest your heart in her, guaranteeing that this life of yours would be extremely comfortable. At that time, you even threw a fit and got mad at me over this matter, just as if I had deliberately wanted to harm you. You feel that love is useless, so does that mean you don't love my dad? I raised my eyes and silently looked at her. Mushen, you are still way too young. Su Tuilan let out a sigh. Two people patching things together to get by day to day. Whether they can stick together and walk alongside each other for long must absolutely not rely solely on love to sustain them. You could even say there's no need to rely on love at all. Once you truly marry someone and live together for a period of time, naturally, you will understand. Before my rebirth, although I went through countless hardships and tasted every kind of emotional pain because I had never truly lived decently with her, I had always remained vague about the truth of marriage. Now I finally understand Aunt's earnest intentions. I blinked, my eyes looking a bit mischievous. From now on, I will definitely listen to Aunt more often. Faced with this sudden closeness of mine, Su Tuilan radiated extreme unfamiliarity. She somewhat unnaturally curled her lips, saying one thing while meaning another, as she coldly replied, "Don't you ever say things like that. I'm not even your biological mother. Whether you want to listen to what I say is up to you." A smile at the depths of my eyes gradually deepened. Aunt might not be my biological mother, but she still cares about my matters so much. Who has the free time to care about you? Su Tuilan, with a face full of impatience, waved her hands. "Hurry up and go do your work," I couldn't help bursting into a happy laugh, with a faint light sparkling in my eyes. "Then I'll head upstairs first." Seeing the time wasn't early anymore, I went upstairs to take a quick hot shower, changed my clothes, grabbed the documents, and headed out. At home, there was originally only one driver following Lin Wanwan. In that car accident, he also unfortunately suffered minor injuries and was resting up, so I had no choice but to walk out of the villa complex to the main road to hail a taxi. It wasn't easy at all to catch a cab around here. After waiting for quite a while, I finally managed to hail one. Once inside the car, I directly reported my destination. That car accident was also unfortunate enough to sustain minor injuries, and the driver is resting, so I had no choice but to walk out of the villa complex and head out to the main road. Fine, but if I leave, who is going to stay by your side? Leaving you all alone, I wouldn't be at ease. Oh, please, if you want to stay, just say it straight. Why make up excuses? You're blindly wanting to stay by my side and don't want to go anywhere else. Taking out my phone to text Lu Tubai and arrange to meet at the entrance of Beyondming University. Before saying another couple of words, that gentleman had already headed back. Hearing that, I immediately had a speculation in my heart, hurriedly pressing the driver. What did that man roughly look like, and what were his clothes like at that time based on his memory? The driver simply described at once, and I was certain that person was none other than Chujimo. In the middle of the night. What on earth did he run over here for? I couldn't quite guess it, but I could be certain that he was definitely hatching some evil scheme. This guy's belly was full of dirty scheming. I had experienced it profoundly in my past life. I turned my head to look at the scenery outside the car window, a flash of icy, sarcastic coldness cutting across the depths of my eyes. Although I couldn't touch Lin Wanwan right now, making Jujimo suffer a bit was still well within my capability. The taxi stopped steadily in front of the gate of Benming University. Finishing paying the cab fare, I got straight out of the car, and with a single glance, immediately spotted someone squatting by the roadside. It was my longtime close friend, Lu Tubai, who was wearing casual sportswear. His hair was slightly messy from the wind, looking just like he had literally just finished working out. As soon as he raised his head and caught sight of me, he instantly sprang up, excitedly from the ground, rushing toward me like a madman. "Brother Shen, you've finally arrived." I instantly stood my ground, not daring to move, crossing both arms, guard my chest in a defensive posture, but still unable to avoid his reckless charge. He gave me a tight, suffocating embrace. "Brother Shen, we haven't seen each other for half a month. You have any idea how much I've missed you, huh? I thought that after you got married you were planning to completely cut off your buddies forever." I got my face rubbed all over by his messy hair while he put on an extremely wronged expression. "This is the penalty for you avoiding me and not meeting up, even not letting me go attend your wedding." The hand I was about to use to push him away paused in midair initially. In order to successfully marry Lin Wanwan, Uncle Tu had put forward a whole pile of demands, forcing me to drop out of school as just one of them. She also demanded that I completely cut off all social relationships. In the eyes of someone harsh and bitter like Uncle Tu, my friends were all scum, not fit to be seen in public, completely unworthy of Lin Wanwan's husband's status. At that time, blinded by that ridiculous love, I muddle-headedly agreed to everything, and even ruthlessly abandoned my old friends, including my bro Lu Tubai. To this day, I still remember clearly that in my past life, meeting him again, overwhelming disappointment was evident in his eyes. Later on, when I fell into a desperate situation, isolated with no way out, suffered every kind of bitterness, it was entirely my own doing. That wedding wasn't even worth attending in the first place. An immense wave of guilt surged up in my heart. Even though I was about to be squeezed to the point of breathlessness by him, I didn't reach out to push him away anymore after all. Was about to divorce her anyway. What did you just say, Lu?" Tubai startled, hurriedly loosening both hands, his face filled with extreme shock. I mischievously blinked and winked at him. "Her ears are working just fine. Once she recovers from her injuries and successfully is discharged from the hospital, I will immediately go process the divorce with her. You didn't dream, even in your wildest dreams, of marrying her." Lu Tubai clenched his whole face in agony, scratching fiercely at his messy hair. "Wasn't marrying her your lifelong dream?" I made no comment, just shrugged my shoulders. "That was just when I was naive and clueless, but ever since getting married to her, I found out she's actually just so-so after all. She couldn't possibly be infertile, could she?" A bad intention instantly sparked in my heart as I purposely pursed my dry lips slightly and put on a troubled expression, looking as though I couldn't bear to speak of it. "Well then, divorce is truly unavoidable," full of awkwardness, with an expression of not wanting to open her mouth. "Then it really is necessary to get a divorce." Then Lu Tubai, with a face full of regret, shook his head. I really couldn't even imagine in my wildest dreams that Lin Wanwan actually had such a hidden illness. Truly, heaven has always been very fair, right? I extremely agreed, nodding my head. Indeed, that's just the way it is. Just relying on this big-mouthed, troublesome personality of Lu Tubai. The baseless rumor that Lin Wanwan might be firing blanks will definitely spread all over the city in less than a day. Consider it a small revenge dedicated to her. My mood was extremely refreshed as I threw my arm over his shoulder. "Let's go! Come with me to the academic advisor's office for a trip to quickly go take back that dropout application form. My next main task is to steadily and practically study to finish the remaining 3 years of university and live out an ordinary, normal, and peaceful life." Brother Shen, why on earth did you ask to drop out in the first place? It was all because of that old hag Uncle Tu forcing me. Otherwise, she would definitely not have agreed to let the two of us get married. In my voice carried a heavy trace of sarcasm. He raised his head to glance at my cold facial profile, being extremely good at reading people and opening his mouth to curse. I knew right away it was that old hag playing dirty tricks. Otherwise, why would you suddenly drop out when you were doing just fine? A good man with such outstanding conditions like you. What on earth could she possibly still find unsatisfactory about you? My conditions are outstanding. You say. I pointed towards the male student drawing a wall mural not far away. That is Yehai, the eldest young master of the Yi family. This is what's called good conditions in the eyes of Uncle Tu. To put it bluntly, It's just having a good family, background and backing. Utterly shallow. The extreme. I only gently let out a cold laugh, completely refusing to go along with his complaints anymore. A realistic society is inherently as cruel as that. No matter how outstanding your own conditions might be, as long as your family, background in the back, is nothing special in front of the Lin family. You are just someone lower by a notch. If you think about it as carefully as this in my past life, even if Jujimo succeeded in marrying into the family as a kept man, even if he gained 10,000 favors from Lin Wanwan just relying on that humble lowly background status of his, the days he lived would definitely not be good at all, having to endure other people's contemptuous glances and attacks day in and day out. That kind of taste is also quite tough to swallow. Thinking it through like that, my heart instantly felt much more refreshed. Walking quickly up to the door of the academic advisor's office, I just managed to raise my hand to knock when the office door was pulled open from the inside. The man inside suddenly crossed paths and caught sight of me. His expression, which was originally calm, suddenly changing drastically. "Why did you suddenly appear here? Didn't you already drop out of school?" I couldn't help laughing out loud right on the spot. The man standing before me was none other than Jujimo's biological younger brother, Kyung. Mentioning this guy named Kyung, he truly was the peerless younger brother of Jujimo, all day long eyeing his own biological older brother's woman, behind the scenes even madfully undermining his older brother. That style of his truly deserved to be called heaven-shaking and earth-shattering. Dropping out doesn't mean you're not allowed to re-enroll. Lutubai turned toward Kyung and curled his lips in a cold sneer. Brother Shing is back. So your little tricks are out of options. Does your heart right now feel extremely uncomfortable? Kyung's gaze was gloomy and fierce as he stared fixedly at him. I'm not talking to a big mouth like you. Don't brazenly step up to chat with me. Aren't you afraid of losing your human dignity? I don't know whether I'm losing dignity or not. Anyway, you don't match up to my brother Shin in any single way. Vicious, corrupt, and playing dirty tricks behind people's backs, looking at him. I couldn't be bothered to talk to a loudmouth like you. Better not brazenly come over to chat with me. Aren't you ashamed of losing your dignity? I don't know if I'm losing dignity or not, but anyway, you don't measure up to my god. And in a single way annoying. Spoiled playing tricks behind people's backs. Ace play. Dirty tricks behind people's backs. That's what you call losing your dignity. When on earth did I play dirty tricks behind people's backs? Lu Tubai let out a contemptuous cold laugh. The good deeds you do, you know best in your own heart. During last month's dissection class, my brother Shen's rabbit was plotted against by someone. It was definitely your vicious handiwork. In Kyung's eyes flashed trace of panic. Cut the crap. Don't spit blood to frame me up. Would never bother doing such a filthy thing. If you're going to accuse someone, you need evidence. It was precisely a good deed done by a guy like you. And I quickly cut in to stop the endless bickering between the two of them, smiling with squinted eyes at the person before me. For speaking. I don't want to listen to this meaningless argument of you two. Kyung, you're blocking my path now, so do me a favor and step aside. For a second, won't you? Kyung glared, with wide eyes staring fixedly at me, not showing the slightest intention of making way from head to toe. I knew this guy, Kyung, too well. Ever since I stepped into the gates of this university, just because I was Lin Wanwan's fiancé, he acted like a mad dog relentlessly, making things difficult for me. If a single day passed without him running to my face to cause some trouble, that rotten gloomy inner core of his wouldn't feel satisfied at all. For instance, at this very moment of drawing bows and brandishing swords right before my eyes, he definitely wanted to use vicious words to stab and provoke me. And moreover, it was the kind where he wouldn't stop until he hurt me. Sure enough, exactly as I expected. Before even a few seconds passed, Kyung began making things difficult, dropping out of school to stay home and focus on winning over sister Wanwan, saying that you might even have a chance to win her heart. But you have now given up on dropping out. Plus, my older brother has currently returned to the country. You two are also about to get divorced soon anyway. He knew best how to hit right at my weak spot. If these words had been spoken in my past life, hearing them would have undoubtedly made my heart hurt like a knife cut, but placed in the present, I remained completely indifferent, without the slightest emotional fluctuation. Therefore, not only did he fail to see my painful and distressed expression, but on the contrary, he saw me break into a smile, showing a neat row of white teeth, flashing him a chilly, gloomy smile as I spoke. If that's the case, does your heart feel any more comfortable at all? What do you mean? My unexpected reaction left his brain blank. You've always secretly loved Lin Wanwan. When you blurted out those words about me going to win her over, day after day, wasn't your heart bleeding at the same time? I suddenly reached out, pinching and grabbing his chin, using force to shake his two cheeks slightly too, both sides clicking my tongue as I continued in a contemptuous, "One, this face of yours isn't much inferior to your older brother's anyway, so how could your heart possibly have no care for this at all? Your older brother has the capability to force her to divorce me. Why on earth would you feel that you yourself can't do?" Same Shukyang's facial expression changed drastically and intensely before my eyes. He batted my hand away, stepped forward and roared, "Mushen, don't stand here talking nonsense. I have never secretly yearned for Sister Wan at all. Look at that hypocritical appearance of yours, loving a woman and not even daring to admit it. Looks like, in this lifetime, you can only stand aside and watch your own biological older brother and the woman you love get all cozy and intimate." These words of mine were not only malicious, they practically didn't treat Jukyang like a normal person, using the dullest knife to stab fiercely right into his vital spot. I simply wanted to make him live a life worse than death every single day, making that little delusion of his sprout even earlier than in his past life. Before completing the divorce procedures entirely with Lin Wanwan, I must personally add plenty of trouble for Chujimo. Shut your damn mouth. Right now, Jukyang's two eyes had already turned completely red, his chest heaving up and down, and even his breathing pace. All kinds of trouble. Shut your mouth. For me. Jukyang's eyes had already turned red, his chest heaving up and down, and even his breathing pace became extremely heavy. You are basically talking nonsense and slandering me. I completely didn't care at all. As I shrugged my shoulders, with "you know best" in your heart clearly written on my face, Jukyang's psychology had somewhat lapsed, and with extreme resentment, he glared fiercely at me with wide eyes, then turned around and strode quickly away, fleeing from this spot. Brother Shen, does Jukyang also like Lin Wanwan? Lu Tubai grabbed tightly onto my sleeve, with two huge words of curiosity written all over his face. I knew that down to his core. He loved gossiping to the extreme. But right now, it clearly wasn't convenient to reveal too much to him. So I raised my hand to signal him to stay calm and not be impatient, and turned around and walked into the counselor's office. Recalling how back then, when I insisted on going through with dropping out of school, the counselor had earnestly tried to persuade me with a heavy heart, absolutely disagreeing, and finally seeing that I truly had made up my mind to leave no matter what was forced, reluctantly and with deep regret, give in. Now seeing that I had suddenly changed my mind and wanted to stay and continue studying inside, she naturally felt immensely happy. After all, losing such an outstanding medical student was also something that made people extremely heartbroken and regretful. After the strict counselor gave me a few more words of advice, she let Lu Tubai and me head back first. The two of us had just walked a short distance away from the office when he lifted his star-studded, sparkling eyes to look at me. "Brother Shen, hurry up and tell me. I'm so curious, I can't hold it in anymore. Hurry up and tell me the whole truth. Didn't you already figure it all out?" Jukyang truly has always secretly loved Lin Wanwan. I slightly curved the corners of my mouth into curve. The smile on my face filled with heavy derision. I had liked Lin Wanwan immensely since childhood, and immersed in her eyes from beginning to end was only Chuzimo. Until before I blurted out those words just now, he had always felt that as long as his older brother could be a match for her while he himself just needed to stand on the side and quietly protect her, that was enough. How on earth could you know this matter so clearly like that? Lutubai was completely shocked by this stunning piece of news. I just smiled with a fathomless, mysterious look without saying a word, and he knowingly didn't continue prying further. After exhausting his energy to digest this earth-shattering gossip, his not-so-bright brain finally popped up with a question. "Why before you said those words just now, did Jukyang in his heart think like that?" While after those few words, his heart will definitely become uncaring and give rise to the thought of wanting to compete with his older brother was simply awakening the deepest desires in the bottom of his heart. I took the locker key out from my pocket, passing my fingers over the keychain, spinning it around with a joyful expression. Tubai at this point finally completely understood everything, and a wicked smile instantly bloomed on his face. "Brother Shen, your name is still as vicious as ever." Slightly raised an eyebrow at him. Just now, I saw the shadow of Mushen from high school, right there. He gave my shoulder a hard shove, letting out a goofy, naive chuckle. "Back then, how arrogant and flamboyant you were. That high-spirited, blazing appearance of not taking anyone seriously. It's a pity that entering college, you went back to pretending to be a good boy, which is really not interesting at all." The smile on my face gradually grew brighter. Mulihang's biological mother, who was also my biological paternal grandmother, was a northerner when he was young. He frequently followed his mother back to the north to live, staying there for several months at a time each visit. Therefore, his personality was extremely bold and unrestrained. Plus, his mind wasn't very smart either. For all these years, he had always lived very happily and capriciously. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caused the Mew family's years of effort to vanish into thin air in the blink of an eye due to failed investments. My personality was more or less vanished into thin air. My personality more or less also inherited a portion from him. Furthermore, their demands on me were extremely low, leading the result that after entering university, I completely let myself go, to put it seriously. Back then, I was a student who, despite having very excellent grades in the eyes the teachers, was still a delinquent, a nigger. As for why upon entering college I forced myself to change and turn into an obedient young man who strictly followed all rules and conventions, naturally it was also because of Lin Wanwan and Uncle 2. I quickly snapped out of my memories from the past life, returning to reality and murmuring to myself in an extremely calm tone, if in my world there had never been her, my past life surely would have been lived so brilliantly. Brother Shen, what were you just mumbling so quietly about? Lutubai completely didn't hear what I said, and with a face full of curiosity, he spoke up to question me. I gently shook my head to signal that it was nothing. From now on, I'll live a life true to myself. I gripped his warm hand tightly, and the two of us took light-hearted steps toward the classroom building. Ever since I was little, I had been smart and learned everything much faster than anyone else. That year, the college entrance exam scores were exceptionally high. When choosing a major, my parents' wish was for me to pick whatever I liked among countless available majors to choose from. I didn't hesitate at all and directly chose medicine. The path of studying medicine was extremely arduous and bitter, and Mulihang had once expressed his disapproval very clearly. I only resolutely stated that it was my own personal preference, refusing to turn back and stubbornly insisting on my choice without ever revealing the true reason inside. The real reason was because of the death of my biological mother, not entirely out of a noble desire to save many people or to prevent ordinary families from being shattered, but simply to accumulate good karma and pray for blessings for my departed mother. Her life was truly far too short. I hope that in her next life, she can peacefully and smoothly live a quiet, fulfilling lifetime. The entire morning was filled with specialized major classes, and since the afternoon happened to have no classes scheduled, Utubai, who hadn't had the chance to hang out and play with me in a long time, eagerly invited me to go street shopping with him. I still had to go to the hospital to take care of Lin Wanwan. However, after making the situation clear to him, the two of us agreed to reschedule for another day to hang out together, and I left the school and headed straight for the hospital. Reaching the hospital building, just went upstairs and prepared to walk toward the hospital room when I bumped right into Uncle 2, who was just stepping out from inside. Uncle 2, upon seeing me, was clearly stunned for a moment. After that, wearing an extremely complicated expression, she opened her mouth to speak. You brat actually have quite some skills. I was left baffled and confused by this remark. Really, before you married Wanwan, the kid actually hated you a lot. Who would have thought that after a mere single night the kid no longer hated you like that anymore? For me to say, you have skills, could it possibly be wrong? Her words were overflowing with sarcasm and veiled insinuations. I tightened my brows without saying a word. Previously, I had always acted very obediently in front of her, no matter how deliberately she made things difficult for me. How harsh and bitter the words she spoke were, I would only lower my head in wretched submission, absolutely never refuting her. Although after my rebirth, my attitude had grown a lot stronger. Clearly, her subconscious still hadn't completely gotten used to that, seeing me stand frozen in place without uttering a sound. She thought I didn't dare to open my mouth to talk back. So she grew even bolder and pushed her luck. You really are just a son raised by that kind of woman. Your inner marrow nature is just the same kind of trash. Since she was pushing her luck, didn't know when to stop. I also had no intention, noticing that, seeing me standing rooted to the spot without saying a word. He thought I didn't dare to open my mouth and talk back. So he grew even more bolder and pushed his luck. What he said is naturally what a son raised by that kind of woman would say. His bone-deep nature is just the same kind of cheap trash. Since she was pushing her luck and didn't know when to stop, I wasn't going to. Plan? Continue tolerating her Uncle 2 if you're sick. Then go see a doctor quickly. Couldn't even be bothered to call her mom out of courtesy anymore. My expression instantly grew as cold as a block of ice. You're supposedly considered someone from the Lin family, yet you talk just like a vulgar street thug. Aren't you afraid of lowering the dignity of the Lin family? These words of mine were extremely harsh to hear. She clearly never expected that I wouldn't show her a shred of respect and would actually dare to say such harsh things straight to her face. For a moment, she was so shocked that she stood frozen in place. By the time she finally reacted, her entire face had turned as red with anger as a boiled lobster mushan. How dare you talk to me like that, huh? Even though you and Wanwan are about to get a divorce, you still have no right to call me directly by my full name. After all, I am your elder. I think you're the one who lacks upbringing, bringing shame upon your family's ancestors. See, she was simply relying on the powerful backing of her maiden family from back in the day and the good fortune of marrying into the Lin family. Although her personality had always been arrogant and domineering, acting like a hedgehog, specializing in pricking others and aggressively stabbing anyone she found an eyesore normally. Very few people dared to confront her head-on. Therefore, the harsh words she could spit out during a fight at most only reached this kind of ridiculously lame level, hearing her drag my ancestors into her cursing. I couldn't help bursting into laughter right on the spot, being called by my full name. It truly is my fault, isn't it? From now on, I'll change how I address you and call you Zion instead. How about that, Zion? Just how big is your heart anyway? Your daughter is still lying in pain right inside there, and it's still unknown if her brain suffered any lingering sequelae. Instead of worrying and caring about her health, you're wasting time standing here mocking me. If you're really that free and idle, you might as well go play a few rounds of mahjong. Shin, you are simply going way too far. I abandoned all image and rolled my eyes hard, truly tired of humoring her. I turned sideways and used one hand to push the hospital room door wide open, then shouted loudly inside Lin 11. Your mom is acting completely unreasonable. I don't want to argue with your mother over this, so why don't we just have a nurse come take care of you instead? Even if you beat Uncle 2 to death right on the spot, she definitely wouldn't have expected me to pull this kind of move. She was practically about to be driven insane with anger by me. She raised her hand and shoved hard against my shoulder. You actually dare to go snitch to my daughter, huh? What on earth do you really think you are? One look quickly. What kind of decency is this? He completely doesn't take me as an elder seriously at all, actually daring to scold his mother as a vulgar street thug, saying I lower the dignity of our Lin family. This grievance is something Mom truly cannot endure for even one more day. Right now, I'm going to call someone from the Civil Affairs Bureau. Over. Today, the two of you must get a divorce immediately. Well, that would honestly be just wonderful. I was so excited that I clapped my hands vigorously in applause. I really have to thank you so much. Having a mother-in-law with such power and influence is truly great, even for a divorce. I don't even need to personally run all the way to the Civil Affairs Bureau. That is indeed way too convenient. I advise you to act a little faster, though. A hopeless case, riddled with brain rot love. A menopausal aunt with a short-tempered attitude. This mother-daughter duo is truly something I cannot bear for even one more day. Veins on the forehead of Lin 11, who was lying on the hospital bed, twitching slightly. Her entire body radiating a terrifying murderous aura. In this world, the men wanting to marry her were countless. Any man who could possibly marry her would literally smile awake even in his dreams. Yet this treasure, treated by countless people as a prize, was being rejected by me so blatantly like this. A terrifying murderous aura. In this world, men wanting to marry her were countless. Any man who could take her home would directly smile awake, even in his dreams. Yet the thing, treated as a treasure by countless people, was being blatantly loathed by me like this. This delivered a massive blow to her arrogant self-esteem. How could she possibly swallow this grievance in her heart? You agreeing obediently. A divorce is for the best. Uncle 2 pointed her finger straight at the bridge of my nose, the depths of her eyes bursting with a blazing fire of rage. She laughed coldly and threatened. Wait until I call someone from the Civil Affairs Bureau over. If you dare to shamelessly cling on and refuse to let go, not only will I make you taste suffering, but I'll make sure none of you in the Mu family have anything good to eat. I also chimed in, the fake sarcastic smile. In this world, whoever agrees to this is a dog. A word spoken is a vow kept. The moment my words fell, she hurriedly opened the handbag she had brought with her, preparing to take out her phone and call people over. Mom already told you my marriage can only be decided by Grandpa alone. Lin 11 stared intently at the hospital room door, her gaze becoming extremely gloomy and terrifying. Whether I want to go through with the divorce procedures with him right now or not is entirely up to me to decide alone. Mom, don't meddle in the middle and do unnecessary things. One, if you don't take this chance to hurry up and divorce him, then just when are you planning to keep waiting until? Uncle 2 expressed absolute incomprehension, her eyes almost turning red from being angered. Across Lin 11's face flashed a trace of impatience. I already said don't manage this matter for me. You always love sticking your nose into these messy affairs. This kind of son-in-law who can't catch your eye. Mom doesn't even care for him anymore. Besides, didn't you always like Chuzimo now that he has also returned to the country? You should hurry up and deal with the divorce, so you can gloriously marry him instead. Fine, today I will go through with the divorce procedures with him. Tomorrow, I will turn around and register my marriage with Chuzimo, Lin 11 said expressionlessly and coldly. Absolutely not, Uncle 2 blurted out almost instinctively. Uncle 2 blurted out almost instinctively. Her precious daughter must marry someone of equal social status, a man with powerful family backing and influence, and someone who is outstanding himself. As for a good-for-nothing like Zemo, what kind of trash was he? He couldn't help her daughter's career at all, let alone potentially cause serious trouble for her later on. Lin Wanwan let out an extremely cold, attached laugh. So it turned out that her mother had always thought this way in her heart. No wonder back then she could so ruthlessly do such a thing. Since you don't agree to let me marry him anyway, what is the point of you rushing to get a divorce now? Lin Wanwan tiredly turned her head, her lifeless eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. Tell Mushin to get his ass in here to see me. Wanwan listened to Mom's advice. Don't waste your breath anymore. Wanwan coldly cut her off, her tune cold, rigid without carrying a shred of emotion. Uncle Tu, wearing a deeply unwilling expression, glared at me fiercely and shouldered a belly full of rage and turned round to storm off. My gaze stared intently at her angry back, my expression revealing pensive, thoughtful look. In my past life, my eyes and heart had only held Lin Wanwan. I had never noticed such a glaring blind spot. Someone as strong as Uncle Tu, a woman with such a personality, had actually never been able to act tough toward her own biological daughter, almost obeying her daughter's every word. Could it simply be purely because she loved her daughter too much? But when all was said and done, she was still Lin Wanwan's biological mother. If she truly made up her mind to cause trouble, Lin Wanwan, in the end, would probably have had no choice but to helplessly compromise. Therefore, this matter of mine, the more I thought about it from the outside, the weirder it felt. The suspicion, deep inside my heart, had been heard clearly by her. I was always closely watching and guessing her thoughts, which made Lin Wanwan's state of mind become extremely complicated. She cleared her throat and gave a soft cough, intending to pull my distracted attention back to her. I blinked, snapping out of my daze from amid the flood of thoughts and with doubt carrying over, silently looked down at her. Hurry up and get in here then. I followed her words and stepped inside, walking straight up in front of the hospital bed. Before stopping, pulled the chair from beside it and sat down. Why not take this opportunity to get a divorce directly with me? Not only was Uncle Tu inside, unable to understand, but I myself also found it extremely hard to comprehend. There's no why at all to this. You and Zemo were originally two people with feelings for each other. Since you wanted to proudly and gloriously marry him, even if your mother strongly opposed it, would be useless anyway. Therefore, deep down, I really didn't understand, in my past life, if it hadn't been for me clinging on desperately to the point that on the very first day, returned to the country, she couldn't wait to drag me away to get a divorce. How could she have possibly continued entangling herself in this messy love-hate relationship for a full 3 years? If we got a divorce immediately after we had just gotten married, it would cause terrible damage to the reputation of the Lin Corporation. Therefore, within a short period of time, getting a divorce was absolutely out of the question. Before her rebirth, this woman had wished even in her dreams to get a divorce, but couldn't after her rebirth. The person who wished, even in her dreams, to get a divorce turned out to be me. Life really was full of drama and irony. I definitely couldn't let this drag on any longer. Wait until after you are discharged from the hospital and we will definitely have to get a divorce. Suddenly, he has experienced rebirth. In this world, there really is such a mystical thing happening. You must have forgotten that when we held our wedding ceremony, only the families from both sides were at the scene, and not even the media knew that we had gotten married, because you had deliberately hidden the fact of our marriage to the outside world. Up until now, people still think you are still single. Therefore, our getting a divorce will definitely not affect the Lin Corporation. In this world, is there really such a thing as an airtight wall? I still need a definite period of time. Just how much longer do we have to wait before we can get a divorce? At least wait until half a year later. Half a year? Absolutely not. I originally couldn't wait for that long. Then, how long do you want? Wait until you're discharged from the hospital, and we'll go get a divorce right away. 1 year. Why are you starting to haggle and squeeze prices again? I'll just be straightforward and honest with you. Then I already have someone I genuinely like, which is why I'm so eager to get a divorce, so I can be with them fair and square and justified. As if I'd fall for your lies. I have absolutely no need to lie to you. If you can accept me cheating during the marriage and are willingly wear a green hat on your own head, then I'll reluctantly listen to you. Wait half a year and then go through with the divorce procedures. Can accept that. Accept what? You heartless, ungrateful ingrate. Have you started believing in Buddha now too, and begun practicing vegetarianism to save all living beings? All right then, this is what you said yourself, remember. If even this you can calmly accept, then I have nothing more to say. You said, wait half a year, so we'll wait half a year. But I have 3 conditions to set with you. First, during this period of time, we'll move back home to live, and we will each live our own lives. If there's nothing important, let's not meet each other anymore. This is completely no problem at all. It was time for lunch. 10 minutes later, I walked in, carrying a thermal lunchbox with a blank expression. I sat down and opened the lunchbox. I brought a spoonful of piping hot porridge right up to her mouth. I don't know if it was because I intentionally slipped a hand or not, but quite a bit of the porridge on the spoon spilled down onto her neck. Mushin, these two words sounded as if they were squeezed out from the depths of her soul. She suppressed an extremely terrifying surge of anger, put on a terrified expression, hurriedly stood up and pulled a few tissues from the box. Shen. These two characters seemed to be squeezed out from the depths of her heart. She suppressed an extremely terrifying wave of anger while I put on a terrified expression, hurriedly standing up and pulling a few sheets of tissue paper from the box, placed on the cabinet. With clumsy hands and feet, I wiped the neck for her. While wiping, I opened my mouth to apologize. I am truly sorry, miss. I really didn't mean it. Lin 11, please, don't be angry, okay? It serves you right for intentionally trying to provoke me. Just now that your body can't even move. Aren't you just letting me do whatever I want? Lin 11 heard my inner voice loud and clear, feeling the tissue smeared with sticky, slimy liquid, slowly wiping across her furious face. Her expression turned pitch black, completely matching the bottom of a burnt pot. There wasn't even any porridge on your face to begin with. Nothing is wrong. I am truly sorry, miss. I actually thought there was some Mushin. You think your life is too long or what? I know that you, young Miss Lin, have power and influence, and anyone who offends you ends up with no good outcome. However, you can't just drive me to a dead end out of cruelty just because I accidentally spilled the porridge, can you? Lin 11 let out a cold laugh. I actually really can. Well then wait until you can move round before you say that. For now, you better obediently suck it up, I replied with a cold laugh, holding nothing back. Lin 11 cursed fiercely, flashes of rage blazing in her eyes. Hurry up and clean my entire body thoroughly and change me into another clean set of clothes. This, I really can't do. I am a young man full of hot blood and vigor. Doing something like this is really not very appropriate, right? Let me go find someone to come change you instead. Okay? Lin 11 was truly driven mad with anger this time. Her face always as cold as frost and ice from the past. Until now, rarely showing any anger. Absolutely not, it has to be you who does it. Today, if you don't clean me up thoroughly. Following a loud bang of the door, slamming shut before Lin 11 could finish speaking her harsh words. I had already taken quick strides and left the hospital room. Lin 11 closed, her eyes tightly in agony, feeling as if the blood vessels all over her body were contracting, in outrage as if they could explode at any moment. He had always did so obediently and sensibly in front of her and Uncle too, looking as though he didn't possess an aggressive bone in his body. But looking at it now, this was definitely because he had intentionally disguised himself. This brat was definitely no ordinary pushover. She had no idea how long she had to endure this agonizing, tearing pain. Just as her endurance was about to reach its limit, the hospital room door was finally pushed open by someone. Hurry it up a bit. Will you? Lin 11 raised her voice in an impatient urging. Miss, please bear with it for a moment. Let me go into the bathroom to get the wet towel first. A hoarse voice traveled over from the door, leaving her stunned. She turned her neck with some stiffness, look over at a woman looking around 50 years old, who was walking with halting, limping steps toward the bathroom. She didn't even know from what corner of the world I had dug up this middle-aged woman. She looked disheveled with messy hair, wearing an old outdated work uniform that was still stained with countless suspicious marks. To let a woman like this wipe her body, she might as well just be given a direct death sentence instead. Get the hell out of here immediately. Young lady, young Master Mew told me about your situation, and I feel deep sympathy for this matter. But please rest completely assured I will definitely not mock you. Do you know who I am? Does who you are matter? My name is Lin 11, haven't you ever heard of Mushin? This damn despicable bastard. Lin 11 took a deep, heavy breath, desperately closing her eyes tightly shut. Seeing this, the woman turned around and walked over with large strides. The process of wiping her down was absolute torture to her. I put on an act and let out a huge yawn. The person I found for you isn't bad at all, right? Pretty good. Indeed. Before I'm discharged from the hospital, I'll have to trouble you to take attentive care of me. Outside my expectations. Unlike my prediction this time, she didn't throw a roaring fit of rage. On the contrary, she acted extremely calm. It was just that when she placed emphasis on those two words, attentive care, it sounded as if she were gritting them through her teeth. Otherwise, I would have genuinely thought she wasn't angry at all. I narrowed my eyes with a flash of danger, a trace of caution appearing on my face. This woman was terrifyingly scheming and vicious. Who knows what she was plotting inside her mind, waiting until after she could move again to fiercely retaliate against me. However, since we were already completely at odds, sooner or later, I wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being revenged. So I might as well just take advantage of the fact that she was sick and finish Wan off right here. He suddenly felt that her current predicament was truly no better by much compared to Wu Dalang. She tried to slightly twitch, her arm a little, and an excruciating, bone-deep pain forced her to draw in a sharp breath of cold air, just wishing that she could move on her own. Forget it. Don't bother hoping anymore. Fully recognizing this tragic reality, she licked her slightly dry lips, and suddenly opened her mouth to ask Mushen, "Do you still love me?" Now hearing this, I let out a soft laugh. "What do you mean? Do I still love you? I have never loved you, okay?" The answer was decisive, fluent, and without a shred of hesitation. Furthermore, regardless of my expression or tone, there wasn't the slightest trace of saying one thing while meaning another. Even without hearing the inner voice, she could clearly realize that I no longer held even a tiny shred of lingering affection for her. This realization made Lin Wanwan's gaze dim slightly. In truth, her heart wasn't necessarily all that upset. It was just that she felt little regretful that right when she completely didn't care about it. A sincere romance had quietly faded away. The two of us remained silent for a long time. Lin Wanwan, with a hoarse tone, opened her mouth. "If Chuzimo and I get married in the future, will we be happy? Probably so, I guess. But I feel like probably not. As for this matter, I give up. Do you need anything else?" Lin Wanwan shook her head. "Then get a really good sleep, since I'm planning to take a nap, too." I walked over to the family bed right next to it, took off my shoes, and lay down on it. The moment I closed my eyes, I could feel her staring intently at me. Lin Wanwan's gaze made me feel uneasy. Why did she keep staring at me like that? Does this person have some kind of mental issue? This thought just flashed through my mind, and Lin Wanwan immediately turned her face away. The eyebrows that I had been tightly furrowing slowly relaxed, and not long afterwards, I sank into a deep slumber. Lin Wanwan heard my breathing become steady. Waiting till I was fast asleep, she once again cast her gaze over. At this moment in Lin Wanwan's eyes, I looked exceptionally pleasing to the eye before. Her eyes had never held me. She only now discovered that I also looked very handsome, with sharp, well-defined facial features, extraordinary aura, and a manly, incredibly captivating charm that easily drew the gaze. Just talking about this appearance, I was absolutely not inferior to Jujimo at all. Perhaps because her gaze was overly intense. While fast asleep, I felt a bit uncomfortable. I frowned, mumbled a few words, and right after that, rolled over to change my sleeping position. Lin Wanwan let out a soft, faint laugh and closed her eyes as well. I slept straight through until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Waking up to find the hospital room door ajar, I felt a bit puzzled. Turning my head to look at Lin Wanwan lying nearby, it looked like she was still fast asleep. I slowly sat up from the bed, slipped my feet into my shoes, and stepped out of the hospital room, seeing Shujaki standing right next to it. A smile instantly bloomed on my face. "When did you get here?" "I also just got here." Chujaki's personality was quite quiet, and normally she didn't smile much either at facing my friendly smile. She had no choice but to awkwardly twitch the corners of her lips. The nurse said to open the door to air out the room for ventilation, so I opened the door. Had to open the door to let in some fresh air. That's why I opened the door. So that's how it is. Knowing I shouldn't act too close with her, I immediately prepared to turn back into the hospital room. "Sir, when I came here just now, I ran into the Chu family's young master. He was making a phone call downstairs a moment ago, and I wonder if he'll come up here later." This remark from Chujaki actually didn't need to be said, and originally shouldn't have been spoken aloud either, but perhaps because she sensed my goodwill, she hesitated for a brief moment before still saying it. Hearing this, I was slightly startled, then gave a faint smile. "It's fine. If he wants to come up, let him come up. His legs are on his own body, so who can manage where he goes? But President Lin will mind." Though Chujaki didn't dare to speak too bluntly about such a scumbag, so she could only offer a subtle reminder like that. "By that time, you'll be the one feeling uncomfortable inside." I smiled and shook my head. "Not at all. I'm already used to it." This statement left Chujaki not knowing how to respond, so she chose to stay silent. I was just about to open my mouth to say something more when from inside the hospital room rang out her cold voice containing a hint of anger. "Jen, I'm thirsty." Instinctively, I rolled my eyes in disdain and nodded and smiled at Chujaki before turning around to step into the hospital room. The woman on the hospital bed had a gaze full of ill intent. I figured she was irritated upon just waking up and found everyone on eyesore, so I didn't think much of it. Poured a cup of warm water and brought it over to her. "Are you and Chujaki that close?" Lin Wanwan's gaze flickered slightly. A similar question like this she had already asked before. A flash of annoyance crossed my face. Set the cup of water down and replied coldly, "Not close. But the two of you really don't look like you're not close." Lin Wanwan let out a cold laugh. Was this woman just having too much time on her hands? Why else would she suddenly pay attention to me and Shujaki? She could care less about whether we knew each other or not, or whether we were actually very close. Why was she so free right now? True, this woman was indeed very free right now, but acting like this was seriously a pain. Hearing these complaining thoughts in my mind, Lin Wanwan's complexion, which was already bad, became even harder to look at. I didn't have a single nice thing to say about her, and hearing so much of it inevitably made a person feel uncomfortable. I think we look very close because I am intentionally acting friendly towards her. A hypocritical smile still hung on my lips. Why else would a man try to please a woman? Naturally, it's because I've taken a fancy to her. The curve at the corners of my mouth deepened, carrying a thick malice. Didn't you say you could accept me cuckolding you? A woman like you is truly rare and hard to find. I must take this opportunity to plant a few more horns on your head. Since she wanted to play a thrilling game, she definitely had to chase that thrill, the absolute end. I was determined to provoke her until she died of anger. Before stopping, the moment my words finished, Lin Wanwan's face had completely turned as cold as frost and ice. Even though she knew I was deliberately provoking her, and these words were completely not real, she was still more than a little angry. The gaze she gave me was deep and bone-chillingly cold. I glanced at it and found it bottomless, making my heart involuntarily skip a beat as piercingly cold air climbed up into my chest in the blink of an eye. Lin Wanwan, as the chief executive of a conglomerate, naturally possessed the formidable aura of a superior. When she got angry, even without any expression whatsoever, and even without saying a single word, it was enough to make people feel terrified. Before my rebirth, I had witnessed her ruthless methods, so toward her I actually felt rather apprehensive as well. If my heart hadn't been overflowing with outrage, coupled with relying on the fact that her body currently couldn't move, wouldn't have dared to offend her like this at all. Your nerve has certainly gotten a lot bigger than before, hasn't it, Lin Wanwan? Her methods toward her actually. I also felt wary. If my heart hadn't been overflowing with anger, coupled with the fact that her body currently could not move, I basically wouldn't have dared to offend her like that. Your guts have grown quite a bit compared to before, haven't they, Lin Wan? Wanwan slightly twitched the corners of her mouth into a slightly wicked smile. Keep up the good work. Clamped my lips shut tightly. Should I stop teasing her now? Otherwise, wait until she heals from this injury. I won't even know how I'll end up dying. Wanwan silently listened to my inner thoughts, the smile on her face turning full of sarcasm. Retaliation, huh? This guy actually dares to think big. You must be thirsty by now, right? Drink some water. I hurriedly carried a cup of water beside me. Trying to soothe Lin Wanwan's anger to prevent her from painfully finding ways to deal with me. Lin Wanwan blandly smiled. Just hit someone with a stick and immediately offer a sweet date, huh? How could that be? You're overthinking. Too much. I stubbornly refused to admit it. Lin Wanwan let out a cold laugh, and just as she prepared to open her mouth to add some threats, the sound of footsteps outside the door transmitted over, guessing it must definitely be Jujimo coming up. I immediately brought the cup of water right up to Lin Wanwan's lips. Dear, let me feed you some water. Okay? My sudden abnormality stumbled her for a moment, then seeing Jujimo stepping into the hospital room, she immediately understood the reason why. Naturally, she wouldn't cooperate with my little act unless she suddenly went crazy. Get away from me, Lin Wanwan said coldly. This was completely within my expectations. I withdrew the fake smile from my face, stood up straight, and shrugged to show I didn't care. You still hate me a lot, huh? Let me feed her instead. Jujimo strode over, snatched the cup of water from my hands, and looked at Lin Wanwan with a tender expression. Just now my words had made him feel at ease. It seemed yesterday was just all bark and no bite. In my sister Wanwan's eyes, there had only ever been him alone. She had never deigned to look at any other man, even once. How could she possibly say her heart changed just like that? Besides, a nobody like me was completely not her type. My worries really were too redundant. However, even so, I still have to make Sister Wanwan hurry up and divorce me. I've waited far too long for this day, and I truly can't keep waiting any longer. It's time to bring Lin Wanwan home. As long as I slightly pander to Lin Wanwan, everything I want will quickly fall right into my hands. Whatever. Jujimo was calculating deep inside his heart, and Wanwan heard it loud and clear. She looked at the man in front of her, whom she had loved for many years, her gaze filled with deep disappointment and bone-deep disgust. So Jujimo, in her eyes before, was only whatever Jujimo wanted to show her. This hypocrisy made people feel truly terrifying. Lin Wanwan hated most being deceived by others, let alone this matter, having gone far beyond mere deception now. This man dreamed of having her. He always pretended not to have feelings for her, playing the game of playing hard to get. He was truly treating her like a fool to be teased and played with. Seeing Lin Wanwan neither drinking water nor opening her mouth to say a single word, and always staring at him with a cold gaze, Jujimo involuntarily started panicking inside. Sister Wanwan, what's wrong with you? Lin Wanwan lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes gently trembling. Don't want to drink anymore. Then, what do you want to drink? Let me go buy it for you, okay? Chuzimo blinked, his big innocent eyes using a gentle, baby-talking tune to ask her. Can't you have a little bit of common sense right now, besides water? What else could she possibly drink? I lay reclining on the sofa beside us and let out a huge yawn. It seems your charm is still huge. You spent 5 years abroad, and it was hard-earned to finally come back yet. If you brewed poison for her to drink, chances are she'd willingly drink it all down, wouldn't she? My instigating and sowing discord was overly obvious, almost written straight across. Would gladly drink it dry. Yet my instigation and alienation tactics were far too obvious, almost written straight across. Inside Chujimo a burst of angry flames rose, but fearing he was in front of Lin Wanwan, he could only bite his teeth and endure. Mushin, I know you really don't like me. Truthfully, I can understand this matter as well. But right, now you and Sister Wanwan are already married and I hope the two of you can live happily. You really don't need to be so hostile toward me. With what eyes are you looking? See me being hostile toward you. I felt that what he said was simply way too ridiculous. Are you even worthy for me to be hostile toward Chuzimo's complexion instantly changed? Never had anyone dared to speak to him like that in front of Wanwan. That scumbag Mushin. What gives him the right to be so arrogant? Chuzimo feeling hard to accept. Like this was completely because Lin Wanwan had previously indulged him too much, causing him to develop a strong sense of superiority. To put it bluntly, it was just a dog relying on its owner's power, yet genuinely delusional that he himself was extremely talented. I originally didn't care at all how he would react. What I cared about was Lin Wanwan's reaction. If Lin Wanwan flew into a rage because of this remark, dropped threats, and forced me to bear the consequences, then I would immediately play soft and concede right away. I absolutely wouldn't go head-to-head with her, but if she only casually scolded a few words, then I would continue pushing my luck, determined to make Chujimo so uncomfortable he couldn't sleep. Lin Wanwan's eyes flashed as she stared at me. Having seen through my little petty schemes, she let out a sneer of extreme contempt. Mr. Mew, you speak with such confidence. I wonder who gave you that kind of confidence. If I'm not confident, am I not allowed to open my mouth to speak? The mouth grows on my very own face. I'll say whatever I want to say. Does this have anything to do with being confident or not? Why was my attitude so arrogant that it made others look at me wishing they could grind their teeth in hatred? Indeed, whatever you want to say is your freedom. The corners of Chuzimo's eyes turned slightly, and he glanced at me before immediately lowering his head. I gave a cold snort, loudly mocking him with a face full of contempt. Since Chu boy here is so sensible in the future when we meet, and I say even harsher words, I hope he will be magnanimous and not hold it against me. Lin Wanwan had already seen through Chuzimo's true nature, so naturally, she wouldn't speak up for him anymore. She narrowed her slender eyes, planning to turn a blind eye and ignore everything wholly and fully, listening to the inner voices of the two men. Seeing that she still hadn't uttered a single word of reprimand against me for quite a while, Chuzimo lifted his gaze to look at her. Lin Wanwan still sat resolutely without moving. Chuzimo clenched his teeth hard, reached out to grab Lin Wanwan's arm, his pale complexion turning gentle as he spoke. Let it go, please, Sister Wanwan. It's because I'm young and still ignorant. Since he doesn't like me saying harsh things, let's just pretend he didn't say anything. Okay? A feeling of extreme disgust spread across the space. Lin Wanwan's deep dark eyes were brimming with frost like a millennium glacier that could never melt. In Chuzimo's past memories, Lin Wanwan's gaze looking at him had always been brimming with tenderness. And had she ever used such a cold gaze to look at him? He widened his eyes in shock, so stunned he couldn't believe it. His complexion instantly turned frighteningly pale, showing resentment and heartbroken grievance in his eyes. Sister Wanwan, why are you looking at me with that gaze? My mood is currently not very good. Lin Wanwan shifted her gaze away from his face. The two of you had better keep quiet for me. Sister Wanwan. Chujimo bit down hard on his lower lip. Are you still angry with me? Blaming me for going abroad for a full 5 years straight, in the middle, and not even coming back to visit you once. You're just overthinking things. You left and Wanwan didn't know. Left for 5 whole years, drifting midway, and even never once came back to visit his sister. You're just overthinking things too much. You left and Wanwan didn't know just how happy she had been. Otherwise, she would not have agreed to marry me either. On that wedding night, she was even so wild and passionate, I truly couldn't help myself from speaking up. This Mushin is truly annoying, to the extreme, always heavily interrupting, right when Chujimo was getting his mood back and cutting in with that exact damaging sentence that left his mind in utter chaos. You want to have a heart-to-heart and build up your romantic feelings with her. Today, if I let you have that heart-to-heart smoothly, I'll spell my own name backwards for you to see. Deep inside Lin Wanwan, she once again found it somewhat funny, while because of my ranting, Juzimo's heart had completely gone half cold. If he were to keep comforting himself, and he really was just self-deceiving. Could it be that Lin Wanwan truly had changed her mind and heart already? Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't tolerate him acting snotty in front of her, thinking of the risk of losing the money tree of the Lin family. He grew so anxious and impatient inside, he was going crazy. His hands clenched into fists out of unwillingness, his face wearing a shattered, wounded look as he gazed toward Lin Wanwan's sister. "Wanwan, are all the words he said true? I don't believe it. He must definitely be lying, right?" Seeing this pained and miserable expression of his, I have to say, my feelings inside were extremely gratified. On the coffee table, a plate of fresh delicious fruit was placed, containing grapes that had been neatly plucked from their stems. I reached out and grabbed a huge handful just like that leisurely, tossing them one by one into my mouth and chewing noisily, my whole body exuding a smug vibe of gloating. Obvious to see. Although I didn't know why this woman was treating him so coldly. For me personally, this matter was truly too wonderful. Once this woman finished recuperating her injuries and was discharged from the hospital, must definitely torment Juzimo until he suffered a mental breakdown. Inside my head, it was always this woman, this and this person, that making the veins on Lin Wanwan's forehead throb violently. She didn't want to let me act so arrogantly smug anymore, so she raised her eyes to look toward Juzimo, flashing the first smile at him since the two of them had reunited. Naturally, it wasn't a genuine smile, but I knew it full well. Juzimo instantly rejoiced to the point of almost crying. Sister Wanwan, truly regret it now. Back then, I shouldn't have gone abroad. Otherwise the expression on my face felt a bit uncomfortable feeling. The grapes in my mouth weren't even sweet anymore. I tossed the half-eaten grapes back onto the plate, stood up and said, "I'm going to the bathroom for a trip." Sure enough, the man that Lin Wanwan had loved deeply for so many years wasn't someone you could just stop loving right away. I really don't understand this kind of two-faced man who says prayers with his mouth while hiding a dagger in his heart. This kind of scheming person who had more tricks up his sleeve than a dragon fruit has seeds. Just what on earth did she ever see in this guy back then? On top of that, she could remain so single-mindedly devoted for all those years, just relying on this trashy taste in men of hers. That the Lin Corporation hadn't gone bankrupt yet was truly a miracle. Ocean, the voice carrying a blazing fire of anger from Lin Wanwan traveled over. I paused the footsteps I was taking outside and turned my head back with a face full of puzzlement. Juzimo was also looking at her with an expression full of bewilderment. Lin Wanwan took a few deep breaths in a row, wanting to suppress the raging fire burning inside her heart. Ultimately failed miserably. "To the bathroom outside and go," Lin Wanwan roared loudly at me. She couldn't let others know she could read inner thoughts. So losing her temper at this moment would only make people think she had lost her mind. My expression was completely speechless. She using this as an excuse to vent her anger on me because of Juzimo. This conditioned reflex of hers is really too extra, right? Looks like a large part of her brain got damaged from the car crash. For the first time, Lin Wanwan felt that this ability to read minds was truly bad to the extreme, driving a person utterly insane. Unless someone, this guy was truly wretched to the absolute extreme, driving people completely crazy unless someone has the superpower of being a block of wood without emotions. Otherwise, sooner or later, she'd be provoked. The point of getting sick, I muttered inside my heart and stepped out of the hospital room until I went far enough away so that Lin Wanwan couldn't hear my inner thoughts anymore. The eyebrows that she had been tightly furrowing only gradually relaxed. "Sister Wanwan, during the 5 years away from you, I really missed you so much. Without that thorn in front of my eyes being me here anymore." Juzimo once again started his sentimental routine, pouring his heart out to her. Lin Wanwan's mood wasn't good. She just coldly uttered a single word: "Going abroad to live a lonely life by myself in a foreign land." Is when I finally realized just how much you protected me in the past, and finally understood that only you could bring me happiness. Juzimo pressed his lips together, looking like he had something to say, but stopped himself. "Sister Wanwan, do you and Mo Honey have feelings between the two of you?" "Feelings? What kind of feelings are you talking about?" Lin Wanwan cast a sideways glance at him. "Naturally, it's love, of course. The two of you got married, so it definitely has to be love, right? Only with love can you achieve happiness." But this statement of his was at least half wrong already. He intentionally spoke like that with the goal of awakening a love-struck Wanwan who was infatuated with him. Unlike the Lin Wanwan of the past, Lin Wanwan of that time was extremely certain that as long as she married him, she would surely, I truly have no love for him at all. Lin Wanwan's expression was extremely calm. Juzimo's face instantly lit up with joy. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, Lin Wanwan's attitude took a sudden 180-degree turn. But right now, I'm actually quite interested in him. Would you consider this in your eyes, be feelings or not? The moment those words dropped, the last drop of blood on Juzimo's face was also drained completely. Realizing that she might no longer love him was one thing, but hearing it with his own ears was a completely different matter. Sister Wanwan, are you speaking the truth? Juzimo's throat felt as dry as if it were choked with sand. His voice sounding so hoarse, it was terrifying. This blow to him was truly too fatal. A woman whose eyes had always held only his figure was now personally admitting she was interested in another man. This was even more agonizing than having him lose everything. Lin Wanwan coldly nodded, gesture meant to shatter the last shred of his hope. How desperately he craved that he was just hearing things incorrectly, or that Lin Wanwan was just deliberately talking back out of spite. Regrettably, none of that was true. Lin Wanwan was completely serious. Why? Juzimo tightly gripped the ornament on his handbag. Didn't you say you loved me very much? Lin Wanwan ruthlessly cut him off, the sarcasm in her gaze more obvious than ever. Yet you always rejected my love. Whether I love you or not, is it still important? Me being interested in Mushin probably isn't important. You either, right? So why? You have to ask like this, don't you think? It's very ridiculous. I just didn't want to let her have it too easily. I wanted to make her feel that my willingness to marry her was entirely because she had to miserably beg and plead to get it, so that she would know to cherish me, always placing her feelings on me, so I could hold my head high and walk tall in front of her and in the Lin family. But I truly never expected that the love she had for me was so worthless. I just returned all gilded from abroad. She turns around to take an interest in another man. Talk about missing by an inch and losing the whole game. Juzimo took a deep breath, his hand gripping tightly and ripping off the tassel on his handbag, forcibly pressing himself to calm down. Regretting it now, huh? Wanwan's gaze was profound and cold. Juzimo's inner thoughts now filled her with nothing but extreme disgust for him. This bastard. Truly, one false move ruins the whole game. Juzimo took a deep breath, his hands gripping so hard that he snapped the tassel on his handbag, barely forcing himself to calm down. Regretful now. Lin Wanwan's gaze was profound and cold. Juzimo's inner thoughts made her feel nothing left for him now except extreme disgust. This jerk, now only leaving behind utter disgust for this bastard. Yet always fancied the art of manipulating her, truly daring and bold, with no small ambition. Although the inner thoughts in the bathroom of Mushin were quite ear-piercing, what he said was indeed not wrong. Her taste in men was truly terrible. I know. Lin Wanwan's reaction was as calm as water. The kind of affection she had once yearned for so desperately in the past, now all it took was a flick of a finger to get it. Deep inside her heart at this moment, she didn't feel a single ripple of emotion. You regretting it is your business, but right now I am already married. Therefore I am sincerely sorry. This was no different than stabbing a direct knife blow that severed every possibility. Seeing her scheming efforts of all these years about to go down the drain, Juzimo's emotions instantly collapsed. Sister Wanwan, do you really have no heart? His face in the blink of an eye was streaming with tears. Anyone who sees a man shedding tears probably wouldn't have the heart, but once Lin Wanwan grew to loathe someone, then, even if that person were handsome and extravagant to the extreme, it still couldn't evoke half a point of ripples in her heart. She couldn't be bothered to respond. And whether it was because she didn't want to answer or because she fundamentally had nothing more to say, but regardless of the reason, that attitude, without a doubt, was driving him to despair, making him feel even more driven crazy. Clearly you loved me so deeply in the past. Why are you now saying that love is gone? Just like that, Juzimo cried while desperately wiping away his tears, his resentful tone sounding just like child suffering a grievance. You're a liar. You said you would always wait for me. Lin Wanwan still sat there, her expression completely unmoved. There was a wall clock hanging on the wall. Mushin, going to the restroom, had already been 15 minutes. Could this man have secretly run away already? A flash of gloomy shadow swept across Lin Wanwan's gaze. If that guy dared to run away, she wouldn't blame herself for being ruthless. I also know that I'm a slow-warming person, plus, that time, I was still too young and very impulsive and hazy regarding romantic matters. But now, I'm extremely certain that this feeling is precisely love. Sister, I had already fallen in love with you long ago, without even realizing it. Juzimo completely failed to notice that she didn't even care to let a single word enter her ears, still crying. Away, a total waste of effort, I mumbled, as I walked out of the restroom, having just received a phone call from Lutubai, so my return was a bit late. Right as I walked up to the door of the hospital room, hearing the suppressed crying of a man echoing from inside, I grinned. All over my face, pushed the door open, and spoke up, Mr. Ju. You shouldn't be crying so miserably, right in front of my wife's sickbed. Anyone who doesn't know would think she'd kicked the bucket. Jujimo choked back, his crying glaring back at me, fiercely turning his head in the blink of an eye to look at me with a face full of resentment. It must be this ungrateful guy who used some dirty tactics to befuddle Sister Wanwan's mind. He dares to talk trash behind my back. Otherwise, how could Sister Wanwan, having loved me for all these years, say love is gone, just like that? Inside Sister Wanwan's heart, there definitely still remains my figure. I definitely still have a chance to turn the tables. All my efforts of all these years not possibly go down the drain. Jujimo's inner thoughts made Lin Wanwan furious, while at the same time she also felt a surge of indignation rushing up. All her sincere feelings were just tools for him over all these years. Once again, she was played like a fiddle in a frying pan by a green tea bitch. For a proud elite lady like her, this was truly... You can stop looking at me with that gaze. I'm getting scared. I genuinely didn't know what kind of drama had happened between the two of them during the 15 minutes I was away. Looking at the extremely tense situation right now, negotiation had definitely collapsed with a snap. If I didn't add fuel to the fire right now, then what was I waiting for, my dear beloved wifey? I'm almost scared to death by him. I hurried, run right up to the bedside, dropped down, and grabbed the edge of the bed, putting on a pitiful expression. As I looked up at Lin Wanwan, "Ah, you almost scared me to death." I hurried over, running right up to the hospital bed, leaning down to grasp the edge of the bed while putting on a pathetic expression. Looking up at Lin Wanwan with his eyes looking at me made it seem as if he wanted to swallow me alive. Don't you think? It's a bit too much to make such a big deal out of it. Why on earth is he throwing such an angry fit? Truly, people just can't bear it. Lin Wanwan glanced at me, the corners of her mouth twitching in a tiny amplitude, hardly imaginable. This dark, provocative personality of mine in her past life, she probably couldn't have done a single thing to me right. Lin Wanwan at this moment still didn't understand a principle. Once you truly fall in love with someone, it also means handing over your fatal weak spot into the other person's hands. If one day the person you love deeply wants to hurt you, then the knife cutting into your heart is also wielded by your own initiative. If not, for loving too deeply, how could you easily hand others the chance to trample on you? Oshing, if you know what's good for you, stop right now. The anger inside Juzimo's heart surged straight up to the crown of his head, making his face look ferocious as he pointed straight at me. You are deliberately trying to piss me off right here, aren't you? When did I piss you off? Don't casually spout blood and frame people. What I said was extremely true and sincere. You clearly know between me and Sister Wanwan know what I didn't hold back at all, correctly cutting him off while mischievously sticking out my tongue. This year, I just turned 20 years old, while you and my wife are both 26 springs old. Back when the two of you started clinging to each other, hadn't even graduated from middle school yet. Could I possibly know what kind of illicit affair existed between you two? Brother Chu, know you like Wanwan, and Wanwan used to like you too, but now he and I have already set sail. However, if the two of you still want to fool around behind the scenes, since she already accepted my finding someone else as her husband, I shouldn't act too narrow-minded either, so I graciously permit the two of you to secretly meet up from time to time. What kind of scummy words are you spouting, Sister Wanwan? Listen to what nonsense he's rambling about. You said you're interested in this kind of trashy man. I really cannot believe it at all. Jujimo roared angrily. I shot back. I'm 20 years old, not some old fogey of 26, so I can only be counted as a young man in his early 20s, not some mature man or some shady old uncle. I laughed. Hee in retaliation, feeling extremely smug inside. Take that. How satisfying to see him so frustrated he's coughing up blood. Whether Jujimo was angry enough to suffer internal injuries couldn't be concluded for sure just yet, but clearly at this moment he was on the verge of going crazy. His body swayed slightly, and through gritted teeth, he squeezed out two words, Mushin. What is it, old uncle? I mean big brother, Chu. Why are you suddenly getting excited and calling my name out? I blinked, my big innocent round eyes, putting on an innocent, faintly look like a lotus blossoming at night, compared to his murderous, raging, demonic appearance just a moment ago. This pitiful act of mine was definitely much more endearing. Even Jujimo himself realized that. He realized that right now, he looked extremely pathetic and unsightly. So he took several deep, consecutive breaths to reluctantly adjust his facial expression. Then, with an unfriendly gaze glaring at me, he asked, "You really like pretending to be pitiful, don't you?" "What do you mean, pretending to be pitiful?" I tilted my head with a puzzled look. Brother Chu, what does pretending to be pitiful mean? I don't really understand. Jujimo let out a cold laugh. He lowered his eyes to look toward Lin Wanwan's sister, Wanwan. He says he doesn't understand this phrase, but surely you understand it very well, right? Given Lin Wanwan's prominent, aristocratic background and formidable family context, coupled with her looks, is what you understand very clearly, right? With the wealthy background and prestigious family ties of Lin Wanwan plus her appearance, stunning and peerless. It was destined that around there would always be countless buzzing flies and mosquitoes. Yet previously in her eyes, there was only a single person, lone him. Toward the men who proactively rushed, toward her she always coldly refused. However, in the past, there truly had been an exception. When Lin Wanwan was in high school, a male student, her same class was extremely full of tricks and schemes. That guy actually managed to win a bit of attention and praise from her. After Ju Zemo found out about this, found a way to approach that male student, and discovered that the other party was a typical scheming green tea male, so he immediately went to expose the guy's true face in front of Lin Wanwan, explaining thoroughly to her what a scheming green tea male was. Lin Wanwan, since long ago, had always listened obediently to him. Ever since that incident, she also began to harbor disgust toward hypocritical types. Therefore, this move was an extremely sharp counterattack by him right at that moment, except that the Lin Wanwan of the present was no longer the machine that blindly obeyed orders as before. It was no longer the Lin Wanwan who complied with his every wish. It was over. Only seeing Lin Wanwan indifferently glance at me once, then turn to Jujimo and cross-examine him. So why? Jujimo's body vibrated violently, swaying and swaying. His face was pale, unsightly, and unnatural. Brother Chu, just now, I was only joking with you. I naturally knew very well what that phrase meant. However, I definitely wasn't pretending at all. Pretending to be pitiful. What nonsense, I was just acting cute. I raised my index finger to prop up my chin, wearing an extremely innocent, blameless smile, acting cute and playing the Bishonen card right in front of his woman. She would definitely become even more infatuated with me. Just watch, eh? Surefire thing like this. Why wouldn't I do it, sister? Wanwan doesn't like you at all, Chuzimo screamed at the top of his lungs like a wild beast. Everything I said. Knew Lin Wanwan didn't have any affection for me. Therefore, even though they were currently experiencing conflicts and friction, and Lin Wanwan might be throwing a tantrum or getting angry at Chuzimo, I wasn't foolish enough to take her as cooperating with me for real. After all, if you lose a fight, your face looks ugly and pathetic like a stray dog's. I immediately blurted out, flawless remark. My skin is naturally a bit thick. Even if your dear little sister Wanwan detests me, I will just pretend she is infatuated with me anyway. Good grief, I truly am a genius in social interaction, although you're getting on in years yourself. Trying to act young looks awkward and isn't cute at all. But as the saying goes, gods don't reject discipline for the lofty goal of winning my wife's pampering. I advise you to still make an effort and challenge yourself for once. My wife might not say half a word outwardly, but who knows, she might be craving it to the point of going crazy in her heart. These sarcastic remarks of mine were truly profound, to the bone, stabbing with a fatal blow, the kind that makes people choke. Calling his wife so sweetly provoked that guy. If it were replaced by someone with poor mental fortitude, by this moment they definitely would have jumped up and cursed madly like a street thug. However, Juzimo was after all a deep scheming guy. Otherwise, how could he have brainwashed and love-trapped Wanwan into fighting over him more than anyone else? With a situation so desperate it was like trying to pluck stars from the sky. The hand gripping tightly onto his handbag, slowly loosened, forcing out a smile even uglier than crying. Mushin, you are still too green and inexperienced. The charm of a mature man doesn't just lie in well, dating is fine too. I will prove to you, open your eyes, what kind of man is truly the most suitable harbor meant for her. I put on a carefree, indifferent shrug. This arrogant, cocky attitude of mine could piss people off even more at number 2. But being in a relationship doesn't matter either. I will prove to you, eyes with my own eyes, what kind of man is truly the most suitable harbor for me. I put on a devil-may-care, indifferent shrug. This haughty, arrogant attitude of mine only succeeded in irritating, fearing that if he continued to linger here, who knows what might happen. She cast her gaze toward everyone indifferently and said, Wanwan, inside my body, I suddenly feel a bit uncomfortable. I'll go back first and come visit you again tomorrow. As soon as those words fell, he still didn't receive any response whatsoever from the woman. Remembering how in the past, whenever he called out Sister Wan, would immediately rush over in a panic, extremely anxious, pampering him, just like a precious child. Even throughout the 5 long years, he had sneaked away abroad whenever he caught even a slight cold. She would dispatch people directly there, personally escort him, and take care of everything meticulously. It was truly considerate and attentive, but what about now? That woman was thoroughly indifferent. In this situation, if it wasn't a complete severing of ties and feelings, what else could it be? His face flushed red with indignation. After all, because he didn't want to throw away the last shred of his cheap dignity into the mud. He didn't say another half-word, flung his hand, and turned to leave. He was truly unwilling at heart. Could it be that all the effort I spent racking my brain still couldn't finally step across the threshold of the Lin family? Why I am not willing, I am absolutely unwilling. This matter absolutely cannot happen. I refuse to let go and surrender so easily. With my humble background and cheap status, trying to marry up into wealth is truly harder than climbing to the heavens. Only by clinging tightly to Lin 11 can I still salvage even a faint glimmer of hope. Must fight to the death. If I don't latch onto her for the rest of my life, I will only be a poor, humble wretch. Lin 11 lowered her gaze to listen to those filthy inner thoughts. A flash of extreme sarcasm lighting up her eyes. He wanted to use marrying her as a stepping stone, to rise from nothing with an ordinary background. Turns out this was his only despicable purpose all along. Laughing away, in place of her foolish, sincere affection that had been misplaced, paying the price with her entire youth spent in vain. The time is getting late. I must scoot on back tomorrow at school. I still have classes. Jujimo shed his act. I don't even need to play the cute green tea persona anymore. His sharp-featured face instantly recovered its distant 1,000-mile-away coldness. That speed, flipping his face like a bullet train. If he didn't go into opera, his talent would go to absolute waste. The corners of Lin 11's mouth curved upward into a distinct smile. Her expression, looking like her mood, was immensely refreshed. The reason she could previously love that cowardly Jujimo to death was partly because Jujimo truly possessed high-level manipulation skills, and the rest was just because he happened to be right up her alley. In contrast, I was a type of person who completely went against her aesthetic preferences, yet by some bizarre stroke of fate, the more she looked at me now, the more it caught her fancy, even feeling that my annoying antics were actually adorable. Lin 11 silently spat inwardly, figuring she must have been influenced by hearing inner thoughts. Knowing he once loved her so deeply, she herself was clearly just— wait, why was she just a third party? She absolutely wouldn't let me leave before clarifying. What kind of truth? She absolutely wouldn't let me leave. If you have the guts to step on mine, then I have the guts to take the stage. I kept my face unchanged and replied indifferently. I'm just afraid you can't afford the price tag. 30 million per piece. Lin 11 couldn't help bursting into laughter. You really have some nerve, opening a lion's mouth and demanding an astronomical price like that. How dare you? What's there not to dare to ask for? I lazily stood up, intending to brush off my clothes and head straight out. Tonight, just let the nurse stay on duty to look after and serve. You no way. Lin 11 resolutely opposed, not because of any lingering affection, but out of fear that I would return to my old ways and sprint straight back to the psychiatric department, messing things up. Opening a lion's mouth to demand an exorbitant price like that. How dare she? Hearing it was there anything I didn't dare demand? I lazily got up, intending to dust off my clothes before covering her straight up. Tonight, just let the nurse stay on duty to look after and serve her. No way. Lin 11 resolutely opposed, not out of any lingering attachment, but simply because she was afraid I'd fall back into my old habits and sprint right back to the psychiatric department. Now thinking back to that psycho old man earlier this afternoon, her mood was still haunted with goosebumps. I frowned slightly, just about to open my mouth and mock her a few words, when Utujin heavily stepped in from outside, inside my heart. I screamed, completely speechless. Damn it! Just as I finished dealing the green tea bastard, Jujimo, this guy's auntie Utujin, pops out too, to plague my life this stormy night with zero energy left. Seeing me carrying my bag with one hand, getting ready to bolt, Utujin put on an unpleasant, aggressive expression and interrogated me. Are you sneaking off? I indifferently gave the sharp nod. So late already. If I don't drag my ass back, my mom at home will be terribly worried and anxious. Cut the act. Utujin's face was full of sarcasm. Your wicked stepmother at home gives a damn about whether you live or die. She only wishes you'd drop dead somewhere. But there's no one standing in the way of fighting for the family estate with her precious son. If you don't know how to speak, you'd better shut your mouth. The huge family estate of the Lin family definitely isn't lacking to the point of needing to go fight for it. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my spit. Arguing with this kind of woman, wearing a square handbag slung over her shoulder, is just without saying another word. Utujin this time actually knew when to behave and didn't reach out to block my way like usual. Waiting for my figure to completely vanish behind the hospital room door, Utujin strode over to the bedside, placing the thermal food jar neatly right on the bedside table. My dear daughter, Mom personally went into the kitchen to simmer chicken soup for you to nourish yourself. This car accident has done no small damage to your vitality, so you must nourish your body really well. Later on, remember to eat a bit more. Shoving her hand toward her face with zero expression, Lin Wanwan gave a cold nod without uttering a single word from her mouth. Tuzhen used one hand to scoop the piping hot chicken soup into a bowl, while her other hand secretly darted glances to probe her facial expression. After scooping the bowl of soup, she pretended to start gossiping as if now, down in the hospital lobby, Mom accidentally ran into him. Mom saw the kid's eye rims were red and swollen. Didn't the two of you just have an argument? No, we didn't. Then why did he? I know what you want to pry into. Lin Wanwan interrupted. Tuzhen, her gaze calm without a single ripple. Already said, aside from grandfather Lin, no one can decide my marital affairs. As for my romantic life, even less does anyone have the right to interfere or decide. The more she spoke, the sharper her gaze became. Tuzhen choked, wanting to retort, but not daring to speak up. In the end, she could only helplessly let out a sigh. After that, she fed Lin Wanwan 2 bowls of chicken soup, cleaned up things, and left. Shuziki was waiting right outside the door. Tuzhen walked past her, then stepped back, and turned around, looking at her with a gaze full of storms. Assistant, so you've been standing out here this whole time, so do you know what happened inside between the 3 of them with Zemo? Tuzhen leaned close to Shuziki, lowering her voice to ask right by her ear. Shuziki's gaze flashed slightly. She gently shook her head. Boss Lin instructed that when others are in there, she told me to stay away from the ward, so I don't know anything. Tuzhen clicked, her tongue in dissatisfaction, her expression also a bit unsightly. But Shuziki was after all Wanwan's person. She didn't dare flare up either, and could only angrily turn around and leave. I left the hospital, heading straight back home. Sutuilan was sitting on the sofa in the living room, wearing a facial mask, and engrossed in watching TV. Hearing the sound of the door opening, she turned her head back and saw me walking in from outside, so she immediately peeled off the facial mask she had applied not long ago. Why are you showing your face back here this late over on that side? There's only you and the maid, being all alone, up on the 2nd floor. You must be terrified. I placed the keys on the shoe cabinet by the entryway, stepped into the living room, and sat down beside her. Sides, how could staying over there be as comfortable as being at home? Sutuilan narrowed her eyes, giving me a sideways glare before letting out a cold scoff. Shot me a glare before letting out a cold scoff. Even though you plan to divorce Lin Wanwan, you've only been married for a few days. Running back home like this will make people talk and gossip. Do I care what people say? I picked a grape from the plate, popped it into my mouth, and blissfully leaned back against the sofa. Even if no woman in the future ever bothers to marry me, I wouldn't mind at all. Being able to stay by everyone's side for the rest of my life is already way too good for me. You're just talking nonsense. Right here, Sutuilan glared at me angrily. If you say another word, I'll chase you out of the house right now and let you fend for yourself out there. Indifferently let out a light laugh. Would you really have the heart to chase me out, Mom? You didn't even carry me for 10 months through the heavy pain of childbirth. So why wouldn't I have the heart? If I heard this kind of remark before my rebirth, my heart definitely would have felt very uncomfortable, breeding even greater resentment toward her. But now, it was completely different. I swallowed the sweet grape in my mouth, stood up from the soft sofa, and said Mom already guessed that tonight I would come back, otherwise the tea table wouldn't have had grapes. Mom, you're always so harsh-tongued with a soft heart. Sooner or later, you're going to suffer a huge loss. Sutuilan let out a cold snort. The biggest loss I've suffered is not kicking you out earlier and wasting so much rice and food. This household, I laughed. Heh, replied. I'll continue being a parasite for many more years, so even if you feel annoyed inside, you'll just have to bear with it. Right after saying that, I scampered and sprinted upstairs. Mushin, when on earth will you actually move your things back? Sutuilan jumped up and yelled after me. I paused, stairs, glanced back down to the house and said, tomorrow. I plan to move back, Mom. Please help me call the moving company. Did I owe you something in my past life or what? Sutuilan roared angrily. I knew full well she would definitely help me call someone. So with a beaming face, I continued heading upstairs, turning to the warm room I had been away from for so long. I took a deep breath. The familiar fragrance filled my nasal passages, making my tense nerves calm down. In my past life after marriage, I very rarely came back here, yet every time I did, the room was immaculately clean, with that familiar scent lingering everywhere. Even when I was away traveling far off without returning, she would still regularly clean the room for me. It's a pity that in my past life, I really had issues, even realizing that I never once wondered why. I softly sighed, walked over to the massive wardrobe, lifted my hand to fling open the cabinet doors, and inside was a clean set of pajamas neatly folded. I smiled knowingly, grabbed the pajamas, and walked into the bathroom. Once my nerves were completely relaxed, I couldn't hold back. Wave of sleepiness crashing over me. fearing I might fall asleep right there in the bathtub. I abandoned the idea of a relaxing soak, took a hasty, hot shower, and stepped outside, leaning back onto the plush bed. I blissfully let out a sigh of admiration. What a wonderful feeling, being able to study at the beautiful age of 20, hanging out with friends during my free time and living a joyful life for my own happiness. Isn't that 100 times better than running after a woman and letting your emotions be constantly controlled by her? Someone who has tasted all the bitterness of life will never want to taste another half drop of bitterness again. My current relaxed state was precisely like that. I lay down thinking about what I needed to do, and I got to school tomorrow, letting my thoughts wander before drifting off into sleep without even realizing it. Early the next morning when I woke up and walked downstairs, I saw Su Tuilan making a phone call. I didn't step forward to disturb her, but just stood in place listening for a few words. Hearing that she was negotiating with the moving company, I turned around, poured a cup of warm water, and waited for her to hang up the phone before immediately bringing the cup of water over to her. "Mom, you've worked so hard." Su Tuilan glanced at me once. Today's mood must not have been bad either, as she accepted a cup of water without saying a word, prompting me to swiftly turn around and lift my hands to gently massage her shoulders. "Mom, I want to find a hospital for clinical internship. Do you see? If you know anyone working in a hospital, a doctor or anyone is fine. Having someone you know makes whatever you do, they're much more convenient." Su Tuilan half closed her eyes, immensely enjoying a massage and service. A few years ago, my stomach was acting up, so I went to Dongha Hospital for a checkup. The doctor who looked after me was still young, but his skills were truly brilliant. After my many checkups, he and I gradually grew closer. Later on, we even exchanged contacts privately and have kept in regular touch over the past few years. I can help you ask around about the situation. See how it is. That would be simply amazing. I knew right away that Mom has the best social connections and makes high-end friends everywhere she goes. I had already mastered how to live with her. Just sweet talk and pamper her, and everything goes smoothly. No matter how arrogant her personality might be, facing such flattering words, she couldn't bring herself to open her mouth and scold me with even a single word, only glaring at me without saying anything further. After finishing a sumptuous breakfast, I headed outside and hailed a cab to school. Today I left home quite early. Upon arriving at school, I messaged Lutubai, who said he had just woken up, leaving me no choice but to head to the classroom by myself first. Walking into the class, I discovered that our usual seats had already been occupied by someone else. On the chair was an unfamiliar female student whom I had never seen in class before. When passing by, I curiously glanced back a few times, but unexpectedly that female student suddenly raised her head, our eyes suddenly meeting. I awkwardly nodded, greet her, but she just put on a cold expression without saying a word, lowering her head. Once again, this kind of reaction made me feel not only embarrassed but also like an outsider. I frowned slightly. Although I felt a bit unhappy inside, it wasn't worth bickering with ill-mannered people, so I didn't bother saying anything else and found a seat far away from her. After neatly packing away my book and bag, I pulled out the spine anatomy book to review material from the previous lesson. I am the type of person who easily focuses when reading books and isn't easily distracted by outside sounds. When the surroundings became noisy and I felt bothered, I raised my head only to see the classroom already packed with students. My face instantly went blank, because not a single person in this class was someone I knew. My brain processed things quite fast, taking less than 2 seconds to realize I had walked into the wrong classroom. I immediately grabbed my books and bag, rushing hurriedly toward the door. "Isn't that Mushin from the medical department? Why did he run over to our class?" Judging by that look, he must have gone to the wrong classroom. The corners of my mouth twitched slightly, and my footsteps quickened even more. Although I had kept a very low profile since entering university, because my exam scores were too outstanding, coupled with a very pleasing appearance, and Lutubai showing me off everywhere, it was hard for me to fade into the background, even if I wanted to. I panicked, slightly bolted out of the classroom door, turned round to look at the sign outside the door, and fiercely cursed myself out in my heart. Clearly, my sleep quality last night was great, and waking up this morning was extremely refreshing. How could I have gone to the wrong floor like this? I ran upstairs, while glancing at my watch, seeing only 2 minutes left until class started. I bolted like the wind up the stairs, and finally, just as the harsh bell rang, I dashed right to the classroom door. The professor on the podium glanced at me once, just waving a hand to signal me to hurry inside and get ready for the lecture. Such an entire academic building. As I ran upstairs, while glancing at my watch, seeing there were only 2 minutes left before class started, I bolted as fast as flying upstairs. Finally, when the piercing school bell rang, I also happened to dash right to the classroom door. The professor, on the podium, looked at me, once simply waved a hand to signal me to quickly go inside and get ready to start the lecture. My eyes scanned everywhere to search for Lutubai's figure quickly walking over to sit down next to him. Shin, didn't you arrive at school early? Why? Are you only dragging yourself into class at this hour? Lutubai leaned close to my ear and asked in a low voice. Don't even bring that up. Just now I went to the wrong classroom because I was too absorbed in reading books and didn't notice. I propped the spine anatomy book up on the desk to shield myself, lowering my head completely in frustration. Unexpectedly, Lutubai couldn't help but burst out laughing. I threw him a sharp glance, using my eyes to issue a warning. Seeing that I was genuinely pissed off, he tried hard to hold back his laughter, not daring to make another sound. Whispering between the two of us was a bit too loud. Professor Namdao glanced over in this direction, stopped lecturing, and cleared his throat with a cough. The students in the class all turned their eyes over simultaneously. Well, that's just great. Now I got to taste the flavor of humiliation just like him. Both of us instantly, obediently shrunk back and started focusing on the professor's lecture, just as this class was about to end. My eyes suddenly caught someone walking past the hallway, even though it was just a shadow flashing by for a split second. This guy could turn into ashes, and I'd still recognize him. It was Jujima. Why on earth would he run over to our university? I stared glued outside for a moment. The bell, signaling the end of class, finally rang. I nimbly packed up my school bag and dragged Lutubai forcefully out of the classroom door. Oh, Chujimo. What's going on here? Chujimo is here. Lutubai showed clear shock. Lutubai stepped outside. I just saw Chujimo. What's going on here? Chujimo is here. Lutubai was openly shocked. He's back from abroad already. Yesterday I didn't tell him this news, firstly because I didn't want his habit of overthinking to make him imagine things for no reason, and secondly because I was afraid he would rush over to settle accounts with Juzimo. Ever since he found out I liked Lin Wanwan and Lin Wanwan fell in love with Juzimo, he had treated Juzimo as a thorn in his eye, clashing and taking subtle jabs at him every time they met. But because Lin Wanwan protected him, he never gained the upper hand and instead ended up bringing a bellyful of frustration upon himself. Right now, if I dared to nod and admit it, he would dare to turn this entire school upside down just to find the guy. Calm down already. Don't be so agitated. Lin Wanwan didn't show any protective reaction whatsoever, so don't rush off to settle scores with him just yet. How can I let it go, brother? I'm over being angry, but I still need to vent my own frustration. You don't know how things were in the past, how much he fabricated and slandered me with all sorts of ugly words, plus all those rumors about me outside were entirely stirred up behind my back by him. I was simply jealous of my family background, feeling that someone with my personality lacked drive and only needed to rely on family background to be respected by society. He felt the world was truly unfair. Lutubai actually had a good eye for people, nailing Juzimo's psychology. Spot on. Lutubai, you're pretty good after all. I squinted at him with a probing gaze, as if meeting this guy for the very first time. I really underestimated you before, thinking you were just a simple kid, always acting like a young master with a blockhead. Get the hell away from me. He pretended to be angry, raising his hand to gently smack my shoulder. Why are you just as annoying as him? All right, I was just joking around. I tightly grabbed his arm. If you were really as dense as I just said, how could you possibly have passed the exam into this university? You just don't like to overthink things deeply in most matters. Your mindset is just simpler than others, that's all. Right. I tightly grabbed his hand. If you were really as clueless as I just said, how could you possibly pass the county high school exam? You just don't like to think deeply about many things, and your thoughts are simply more innocent than other people's. That's all. Actually, that's a very good thing. Hearing these words, his face beamed with delight, pouting and acting arrogant toward me. Then he burst out laughing. Considering your bratty self knows how to talk, I will reluctantly forgive your teasing from just now. Seeing his beaming face, I lightly squeezed his shoulder. I want to know what I came here to do. Go scout and sniff out the situation with me for a bit. That's easy. Just ask around casually, and you'll find out. Right away, Lutubai cast his gaze around the surroundings. Just now he walked past. Here, let me see if anyone grabbed inside scoop on this. Pham Chinyu, come over here for a second. A female student, standing, leaning against a wall not far away, cast her gaze toward us and leisurely walked over. Tubai called out, "What's up?" Pham Chinyu's expression looked sleepy and bored. I was just trying to squeeze in a quick nap for a moment. All you know every day is burying your face in sleep. Huh? I need you to ask around about someone. Just how a man walked past the hallway. Did you see where he went? Pham Chi-nu opened her eyes. A tiny bit fell silent for a few seconds, and then slowly spoke in his hand. He was holding an employment application form, so he's probably a newly transferred teacher. Without a doubt, went to the principal's office. He came to our university to be a teacher. Lu Tubai widened his eyes in utter disbelief. No way, that kind of guy even deserves to be a teacher. I went abroad to study. Why wouldn't he deserve it? My face showed obvious contempt. That overseas school he attended, you just had to fork over money to squeeze in and study there. Who knows how much money was burned into that place before. Now coming back home to be a teacher. Probably thinks he's so great, huh? The more Lu Tubai talked, the more his blood boiled with anger. Right away, turning and striding angrily toward the stairs. Just looking at this pose, you could tell right away he intended to pick a fight with him. I hurriedly reached out and yanked him back. Tubai, don't get excited so fast. Even if we don't go look for him, sooner or later, he'll come looking for us anyway. He's wearing a face full of doubt as he turned back to look at me. How do you know for sure about that? Yesterday I just made him who's all face in front of Wanwan now that he's sneaked all the way to our university and brazenly acts as the school's new teacher. He definitely wants to take the opportunity to flip this game around and teach me a lesson I'll never forget. Right here I slightly twitched the corners of my mouth, flashing an extremely confident smile. Now I and read him like a book. Lu Tubai, who had always trusted me, implicitly now saw me speaking with such absolute certainty, so he pouted and compromised. Fine. Then I'll follow your lead and trust you for once. Let's wait for him to voluntarily show his face and come find us. The next class is about to start. I looked at Pham Chi-nu and smiled politely. Thanks a lot. We'll head back to class first. Pham Chi-nu easily nodded, raised her hand to lightly pat his shoulder, then turned back to her old spot, leaning against the wall, with her eyes squeezed shut. Lu Tubai looked at her and muttered complaints. This girl is really weird, only liking to lean against the wall to sleep. Who knows if she's actually sleeping for real or not? This look of hers is either out of a habit, hard for ordinary people to explain, or she's plotting some kind of scheme. I meaningfully glanced at him, carrying an expression full of hidden meaning. Lu Tubai, shouldn't you fall in love already? Pham Chi-nu actually has a very special personality, always arriving early and leaving late, alone at school. At first, I was very curious why someone so solitary was close to her. Later I heard she was the illegitimate daughter of Pham Group's chairman, Pham Min. Pham Min suffered a terribly severe car accident, and his wife and biological daughter were both on that vehicle. Getting close to her. Later on I heard she was the illegitimate daughter of chairman of the fan group Fan Ming. Fan Ming suffered a devastating car accident, and his wife and biological daughter were both in that car, on the bus, but ultimately only he was rescued and had his life saved. After waking up, he immediately had someone call her to his bedside. The implications naturally didn't need to be spoken. It was also starting from this moment that she began enthusiastically pursuing Lu Tubai, and moreover pursued him with great dedication. That's why right now I just said those words. Why do you speak so inconsistently? He looked at me with a somewhat strange gaze. Furthermore, I already told you long ago that I couldn't care less about getting tangled in messy, romantic entanglements. I want to live happily by myself for a lifetime. If there's someone who can love you for a lifetime, it's definitely going to be happier than staying alone, right? I grinned from ear to ear and retorted. He shook his head and said, forget it. I don't believe there is such a long-lasting relationship in this world. Even in fairy tales, a prince might not necessarily be faithful to one person either. Really or joking? I felt extremely surprised. I glared at me with a look. If you don't believe it, go research and see for yourself. All right. You're the most knowledgeable person. I believe you. Is that good enough? Right at this moment, the bell signaling the start of class rang in my ear. Determined to completely end this topic, I grabbed his hand and quickly ran back to the classroom. When the class was halfway through, he leaned close to my ear and whispered, when is he going to come find us? He must at least wait until this class ends. But when this class ends, it's lunch break already. Eating my teasing gaze, he forced himself to continue. Lunch break means we have to go eat. My stomach is growling with hunger. He was a genuine foodie, whose 3 daily meals absolutely could not miss a single one. And the remaining time, his mouth never stopped resting either. Not letting him go eat at the right time was honestly more painful than anything else. Then, you go eat. Then I'll stay behind alone to wait for him to come. That'll do. How can that be? How could I dump you behind all by myself? Am I the kind of person who doesn't know loyalty? Or what he said with an extremely serious look, just like taking an oath. Seeing that I had just doubted him, I already knew his personality too well, so I laughed and asked back, did you really think it through, not planning to eat lunch this afternoon anymore? Clearly he Still hadn't thought it through at all, inside wanting to enjoy sumptuous lunch, while also not wanting to abandon me all by myself, hesitating and scratching his head in frustration. Suddenly, his face lit up, and he grabbed my hand tightly. Didn't you say he would come find you? Why don't you just go to the cafeteria? No matter what, he'll naturally show up there anyway. That's true. Just now our minds were too rigid and didn't know how to flexibly adapt at all. He blazingly fast packed up his books. Hurry up and go a bit later. And my favorite dishes will all be bought out. I gave him a deep look. It's fine. Even if we go to the cafeteria, he might not necessarily bother to show up there. A guy who cares extremely